had a massive intro speech while the intro was going. I didn't have my mic on. This is starting off really, really well, I have to tell you. Hey, us and Orchids, it's good to see you. Thank you so much for being here, Fernanda. It's good to see you too. Now, let me just stop sharing the screen for a moment here. All right. For anybody that is new, please remember and look at the ticker bar at the bottom, because that is the case tonight as well, seeing as this is interactive, and I will stop the stream at any given point in time. If you didn't read my comments earlier in the chat, Shirley, hey beautiful, it's good to have you. I hope that you are keeping warm. Just make sure that if you want to stop me at any time, guten Tag, Penny Lane, Mona Chica in the house. It's so good to see you. I'm about to cry. And breathe. Penny Lane, I think, was subscriber number 2. I am not sure, but oh, she is my Mona Chica. She really is. I will always look at my Mona Chica and I always think of Penny Lane. I'm so glad to see you. Guten Tag, schöne Frau. Right, now we have several options tonight. Again, stop me at any time. Let me know in chat if you want to come up and discuss a certain topic that we're going to be addressing today. I have approximately 10 things I would like to cover tonight, but no, she's not. She's in the States, but she has a history. I'm doing well, Penny. What can I say? What can I say? It is winter. My orchids are going through some difficulties. I've lost some orchids. Such is life. I have a roof over my head. And, well, that is a blessing at this day and age. So I'm fine. Thank you, Penny, so, so much. So yeah, stop me at any time. Also, if you have any kind of issues with your orchids as we're going through the subjects tonight, send me an email, send me pictures, let me know. We can address them here and now. And that is possibly also going to affect the flow of the live stream if something in your mind registers and you want to address it straight away. So I do have 10 issues sort of rounded up, thrown into a little cauldron. You are my Mona Chica, Penny. I'm emotional to see you. So I have them all thrown into a cauldron. Maybe the categories don't really fit, but if the stream gets too long, I will cut it, I'll shorten it, and we'll do part 2 tomorrow. Meanwhile, I was also kind of anticipating to see Evie Barcode today, because in our last live stream, I had him or her on the radar, because they wanted to send me images of their carnivorous carnivorous plants. You see, I don't do anything but orchids, so the jargon fails me. So I have not heard back from them, even though I've emailed them. If they show up tonight, this stream I will not interrupt. Otherwise, we're going to lose the flow and the concept. But I do want to say to Evie, if you watch on replay, please send me an email. Let me know what we're up against when it comes to your carnivorous plants, so that we can fit that into a live stream without going away from the topic at hand. Okay, so I have 10. That's why tonight is a very busy screen, and I am looking at my streaming software only while I have a slideshow. Well, I've stopped the slideshow because it covers my whole stream, and that blinds me from everything else that I really actually want to see. So what I want to start with tonight is shriveled leaves, drooping leaves, and things that we can come across without actually, we think we haven't done it right, or we've done too much, or we get an orchid like this from a friend and then we want to save it, especially when it's gifts. No, they're not, Asen. I am so lost. I have one pot of house plants in Lecker and self-watering. I used to have a whole jungle, but it's very difficult for me to, keep my terminology in check, because it's just orchids, orchids, orchids. So let me make sure that Artisan Art, amigo from the Philippines, it's good to see you. I hope that you're doing well and that your holiday weekend was fabulous. And I also hope that you are all rock and roll and ready to move into 2023. Thank you so much, Artisan Art. I am not on the YouTube side of the chat, Artisan Art, otherwise I will make you a mob. I just have a mod. I would just have a very, very busy screen tonight, and I'm trying to make sure I don't X out the live stream straight away. I'm very happy to hear that. Oh, Artisan Art is a wonderful channel who does live streams on the daily, and he has great music. He's got great little widgets. It's just a fun place to go. The music for me is what uplifts me while I'm going about my orchid chores, even though I very, very rarely chat. Happy New Year to you too, Artisan Art, and your family and loved ones. What is my opinion of putting ice on orchids? Right, you know, his music is awesome. So, you know, this thing about ice, I actually have a video script ready for an actual video on it, but I'm not a confrontational person. I don't actually like confrontation, but I also hate misinformation, which is another thing I would like to do on a live stream. But I'd like to have somebody volunteer come up for that live stream as a partner as we go through channels debunking their misinformation, and yet somehow they get millions of views within 6 weeks. I would love to analyze these channels, but I would like to have somebody with me on that live stream, because I find that my opinion is only one voice, and these live streams are interactive. So, ice. Yes, I've got the script ready. I haven't filmed it because I can't jump over. Asen, email me. I need your voice. I like it. I loved your comment in a recent community post. Then bring it on. Let's, you know, mix and match. I need me somebody like this. This is because, you know, I'm not here to derail any other people. I'm more the encouraging kind. And but there are certain times when you just have to put a stop to it. Or if these are conglomerates with massive kinds of they figured out the algorithm, how to do it, and they're raking in the money through YouTube, I don't give a hoot how they do it, why they do it. If they put out correct information, I am all for it, and, you know, more power to you. But putting out bad information when it comes to orchids, I've seen them do it with roses. I've seen them do it with, well, you name it. Any kind of hacks they bring out, I don't know. Anyway, it's a plan, Asen. We can work on that possibly for next week, because, you know, Happy New Year. So we can start the new year of, you know, just clearing the slate and getting a second opinion. And I would so appreciate your time. Thank you. Now, that's the thing with the ice. The first thing anybody is ever going to tell you, Penny Lane, is that orchids are a tropical plant, blah, de, blah, de, blah. Not all orchids are tropical, so I'd like to take that out of the equation. Stop with the tropical, because, you know, some orchids are actually very, very adapted to snow and ice, etc. However, what these people are doing is showing the ice cubes factor from the point of view and applying them on warm to hot growers, and we might as well call those tropical plants, all right? So the correlation between what they're demonstrating and what they're advising does not match with the orchid they're showing. If you want to put ice cubes on a Neophanetia, I still wouldn't recommend it, because you're putting that frozen solid block of ice on something that normally would only have a little bit of frost, which are little particles, and they will melt very, very quickly when the sun rises in the morning, or when the temperature rises. A block of ice is never good on an orchid. The water is cold. I do not recommend ice at all, ever. Now, what is the ideal temperature? I would have to open YouTube. Let me just go to get another window. The temperature, the ideal temperature, and we can play around a little bit with the margins of what is the temperature for watering your orchids, or for the water in the orchids. Let me just make sure I get my thoughts straight here. Is no less than 18 degrees Celsius or 64 degrees Fahrenheit. No less than. Now, in my situation, I sometimes have 14 degrees Celsius or 57 degrees Fahrenheit, and I've seen no damage. Not on your orchids either. That's right, Shirley. I see no damage with 14 degrees Celsius. And why do I say 14 degrees Celsius? Is because sometimes I need to get to watering my orchids and my buckets haven't actually warmed up enough outside. And sometimes as we get deeper and deeper into the winter, my buckets indoors won't be much warmer either. Exactly. There you go. Now that is an analogy that is amazing. And I wish I had my YouTube open because I would then highlight that orchid. It's like storing a melon in the fridge and wondering what happens after you defrost it. Exactly, it turns to mush. Now, you will also hear many, many stories of people that say it is a successful way of watering the orchids and they've never had problems and they've been doing it for years and years. The orchid always reblooms. So, well, you know what? I'm going to start writing down timestamps because this is my rant about ice. This is a video in a video. But so you could say that they've had success with it. And I am so happy to hear that because that means there's one victim or plenty of victims out there less than what normally would be the case. The reason why they say it's working, the ice cube method, when you look at their new webpage, since the years they started this nonsense, I've been following how the marketing team is justifying the onslaught of the contradictions that have come against them and they've been up against for the past years. So their webpage and their lingo has changed a little bit to somehow tweak what they're saying. So their brand is actually Just Add Ice. That is their brand. Oh, I am loving this. I am warming up to this. And their brand is Just Add Ice. So their lingo over the years has evolved a little bit. They still do not say it's wrong, but they have now added a paragraph that says it is basically the measure that 3 ice cubes will bring to a pot, and that is the quantity of water you should be using to water your orchids every week or every 10 days, depending on the conditions in your climate or where the orchid is at. It is about the quantity. So even in their webpage, they say a small pot, 1/4 of a cup. They say a medium-sized pot, 1/2 cup of water, and they say a big size pot is a full cup of water, which when you melt down 3 cubes, as they suggest, should come for American sized ice cubes, because now, oh, I want to debunk this so bad. Now we are going to talk about my ice cubes are smaller than yours. Now we need to talk about the size of the ice cube. What yield does the melted water produce? It's ridiculous. But yes, they have been adjusting their lingo a little bit. I may still do the video, but oh, I love the question, Penny Lane. Thank you so much. You opened the door and I went straight in. Hello. Which is also wrong. Exactly. But you see, maybe in another 2 years, because I've been watching how they are evolving with their lingo, maybe in another 2 years, they're going to refine that paragraph one more time. Who knows? It's a trap. It's absolutely a trap, just like terminal spike breeding is a trap as well, because they want to keep their profit margins up. That's right. It made me, actually my first reaction, Fernando, was, what are you talking about? What are you doing? And even on their webpage, I'm like, and their YouTube channel, I'm like, what are you talking about? It's, yeah. And now I'm just angry. And I so want to, you know, have a real chew about the subject. I think I just did that, and I'm going to make a live bites out of this one with an image of a drooping leaf. Small ice cube, large ones. Thank you, Penny. Really, thank you. That door, oh, it's a double door. I just like, hello, like Django in the, you know, the spaghetti westerns. Hello, here I am. It's like you read my mind. Yeah, I was looking through all the video ideas I haven't filmed yet, and I saw Just Add Ice, and I thought, I'm not entirely sure I want to go there, but, and many other channels have already done that, but, you know, I've got a voice and I wanted to share that, but this could just make an easy live bite. We shall see. So what I'm going to do is start to take notes here, and then we'll move on to the subject of drooping leaves, because some of my subscribers, viewers, orchid ninjas have sent me images in the past, and I've always asked if I need them, can I use them on the channel? I have their permission. I hope I've labeled every single image correctly so I can give everybody kudos. And I was about to write, just add kudos. No, just add ice. Sorry. This helps me afterwards when I put in the timestamps to save time instead of searching for anything. Now, when it comes to feedback, I hope that maybe you didn't read all the chat. Maybe you will hear audio issues. Let me know straight away in the comments. That is why I'm not opening the YouTube screen, so I can see it straight away. I will go on mute and hopefully let the stream pick up and collect itself, and then we will continue. So if you hear dead air, that is me on mute, and you will see me typing in the chat that I'm muted. It could also apply to the fact that the dogs will bark, and I don't want that to come through as quickly as I can help it. I hope the music in the background isn't too loud, so let me make sure. And of course, this image here is the first one. I've already said I was hoping to mark it up, and I don't know the name of it, of whoever sent this to me. So whoever you are, if you see it on replay, sorry, I already failed in making sure that you get acknowledged directly. But anyway, so we're going to start with the subject, and we'll start off with something that is probably pretty obvious to everybody that I can see here in the chat, but I'm going to approach it anyway and then see if there are any questions based on what I'm saying. So when orchids take on a droopy, wrinkly appearance, this is usually a sure sign of a watering problem, and in most cases, then there's a problem with the roots. So either the pot has been kept overly wet and soggy, and the orchid has experienced root loss because of that, and therefore cannot take up water, or it has been left extremely dry and has no water to uptake. It's actually ironic that leaving your orchid in a pool of water would cause it to suffer from thirst. Yeah, depending, because, you know, not many people would actually think every other plant that has droopy leaves, water, water, water. So this is why just add ice and will work for a certain period of time until you've killed all the velamen inside the pot and you've burnt the velamen because of the cold on the top. So basically, drooping leaves would suggest there's something wrong with the roots, or it hasn't had enough water. But sometimes we get an orchid, you know, we always look at Phalaenopsis for the classic examples, but sometimes we get an orchid that has drooping leaves, and it could just be because that is the nature of the orchid to have drooping leaves, which has nothing to do with watering. So this is one of my Paphiopedilums, no ID. It's like an American hybrid sort of thing. And this Paphiopedilum, if we get to the subject tonight, will show up in other issues, because you can see this orchid is clearly have has a history and has had some things it's had been dealing with, and I thought it was a great example to talk about what everything can happen to an orchid with a simple example. So our first visual of this orchid, you're not a slow learner, Penny Lane. You're like me. Until it doesn't make sense, it doesn't, how you say, absorb in the mind. You can say you're a slow learner, but that's not it. If the information is not ready to be taken on board, then it's very difficult to apply it. So don't talk yourself down, lady. So Asin Orchid says, by the way, I will leave Asin Orchid's link in the description. Quick Google search will take you to his channel as well. But in the description, I will leave the link to Asin Orchid's YouTube channel. Too wet is always a special topic at all. Exactly. If it's too wet or not, most appliances semi-high. Exactly. And that is a completely different topic for either another live stream or another script that I have ready to film, but I haven't filmed it yet. We're going to get to that possibly in a video. So I'm not going to deviate too much, but you're absolutely right. And you've nailed it again, Asin Orchids, with what you've just said. On the other hand, you can also have drooping leaves in a situation like this. Some orchids, when they are on a rhizome, they grow and they have their new growths on a very tight rhizome. These drooping leaves here have nothing to do with a lack of water. Basically, this is an old growth dying back, and it's taking a very, very long time for the orchid to absorb whatever it is that they can still use within the old growths, but while the new growths are already growing nice and clean, as you can see on the top hand right here. Let me do that. And you can see that that growth is already coming in new. The older growth behind it is looking a little bit fresher. And then in this orchid type, slipper orchids, for example, the old growth will eventually fade. This growth is now 3 years old. And at this point in time, I could cut off the leaves, but if I had done that, I wouldn't have had this example. So I caught myself in time. Now, the thing is that at least with these sympodial orchids, we get a chance to have a new growth starting, and it's okay for the old growth to actually die off. Anyway, we can separate this orchid at some point in time. They are looking fantastic. They're looking so much better than the other growths, but that'll be another category of orchid common issues. Sweetheart, hand hearts to you. Penny Lane, Mona Chica, you stay safe, okay? I don't know exactly how cold it is where you are, but make sure that you stay safe and give Ma Petite Fleur a little bit of a bussy on the cheek. Much love to you. I thank you so much. Oh, I was about to say I did not get that email. Okay. Yes, I do too. But I'm getting a little bit bored because there's nothing much I can do with my orchids at the moment, and the weather is atrocious. I can't film, and I was about to just, jump the gun. So anyway, with sympodial orchids, we get the opportunity, and they will grow another growth. Eventually we can deal with the old growths, either cut them off as the leaves are all yellow, or as in Asin's case, all brown, crispy, dry, where you can just, with a light pull, they will fall off on their own. However, when it comes to monopodial orchids, complete and utter total root loss is going to be a massive problem. And I personally have not successfully revived a monopodial orchid that lost its roots. To this day, never. This was my Aurora, the original one. She's a very smelly, beautifully fragrant, smelly kind of orchid, and I was dying to save her. So sometimes if you know what you're doing, you can get a new growth coming in at the crown and cultivate that, and then it'll grow roots and the orchid will save itself that way. Or it'll grow some kind of a new growth at the stem, do the same thing, cultivate it, and it will survive that way. I got to this point and then my orchid collapsed. which can happen because of lack of energy, or as in my case, I didn't know what I was doing. But clearly you can see by the stubs and the twigs, the steely, the dried up steely, you can see that this orchid suffered root loss simply because my mistake was I repotted it far too soon without taking so many factors into consideration in my climate, be it the temperature, the light quantity, especially the temperature. Let's put it that way. I didn't even wait for new roots, but I don't have to if I get the other two right: consistent light and warm temperature. So Asen says, same here, they all died when they're exactly as much as I spraying. And that includes Vandas, Asen orchids. I have not recovered a Vandaceous orchid ever once the roots were shot to bits. So Brenda Jernigan here sent me this picture, because what I also do in the background is I get pictures like these, especially from my orchid details. The form is linked in every pinned chat on every single video if you have issues, and then I go and analyze and I try to help out with orchids this way, and that is how I get these pictures. And people are so kind to say, yes, you can share them as and when possible. Now, so Brenda Jernigan, thank you so much for this image. It has been a while. If you see this on a replay, please let me know how this orchid is doing for you. But you can see here some serious, you know, floppy ears, like a little basset hound that's about to step on his ears. But in this case, the orchid, I hope, has recovered, but she has also enough energy reserves in those leaves to make a recovery. And we can also see that the next phase of growth is healthy. Now, hopefully the roots have recovered, and we get this very, very often. If, for example, we buy a beautiful big orchid in a shop and then we bring it home, even the change of a climate, an environment, and area can shock an orchid, and it'll just go floppy below the leaves. It's part of its energy energy preservation, and it'll focus more on what else it needs to do to survive. It can be a sign that the orchid is in stress, but not necessarily. As you can see, the new growth is doing well. So Brenda took care of what needed to be done. The leaves that are shriveled and nasty looking, they may recover to a degree, but in this case, I think it would be only this leaf that will stop having any kinds of wrinkles, maybe a few grooves. Might be a little bit of a groovy look there. But other than that, the lowest leaves will probably never really recover. However, they are resilient, and it doesn't matter really, as long as it doesn't matter if this happens to your orchid. We don't like it, but normally they should recover unless you make a hat trick of mistakes in order for them to really go downhill, as was in my case for many, many years. And that is due to my stubbornness in order to figure out, what am I doing wrong? How am I going to get it right? Anita, hey, it's good to see you. Thank you so much for being here. Okay, so here we have my Aurora before she started growing her new growths in the middle. So I was documenting this orchid. I swore to myself that this one is going to make it. It didn't. I have 2.0 and I have 3.0 because I didn't realize or didn't think that 2.0 would actually survive. So now I have 2.0 and 3.0, simply because the fragrance of this complex hybrid, I don't know who they put in there, but the fragrance is knockout gorgeous. Anna Reiter, servus, grüß dich. No, this plant is, oh, you mean this one right here? You don't think this plant is still alive? Well, I have a feeling that she is. Not that I have any insider knowledge that I am not sharing with you, but I have a feeling she is. I think she's okay. She's okay. It's good to see you. Anyway, so drooping leaves is not necessarily a lack of a root system. Make sure that you know what species you have, what hybrid you have, and if you think it should be an upright leaf and it is drooping, possibly a parent or something snuck into the hybrid and got it to droop. We always see Phalaenopsis examples, which is a shame because there are many, many orchids out there that have naturally drooping leaves. It's only a threat if, if the orchid should have upright growing leaves. So let me move on to the next category. And again, at any point in time, feel free to stop me. And if you want to join, yeah, hybrids are tough. At least they got that right. At least they got that part right. On some of them. Excuse me while I take a sip of water. Now the next one we have, it's not necessarily an ailment. It is in all reality, it is a, let's say, it's not user friendly. It's the person. It's like when you say the program of a computer or the computer is crap, it's not working. Usually it means that the application of the computer, whoever is handling the program, doesn't know what they're doing. It's not the computer, it is what is being done to it or what code is being put in. So my next subject here is bud blast. Let me just make sure I get the timestamp down for bud blast. Okay, so if we're going to continue at this rate, we may just cover all of them, but we are talking 2 out of 10. Okay, bud blast. Now, always a sad thing. This orchid as such is not with us anymore, not in my collection. She died of another issue that we are going to be addressing further down the list. Right, so bud blast is one of the most frustrating things that can happen, especially when you think you're doing the right thing and everything's getting enough light, and only to have the peduncle start to yellow and shrivel before the buds even get a chance to open. The developing buds of an orchid are by far the most sensitive of the plant, and bud blast can happen to any species of orchids. Not a single orchid is exempt. So, some of the more common causes for this problem are a sudden change in environment, as in you buy one and you bring it home, beautiful spikes, some blooms have opened, even if you're just driving locally. Yeah, no matter whether it's got anything going wrong, I'm not even talking temperature, just, you take it from the garden center or the wherever and you bring it home. Poof, it can cause bud blast. It can also be the plant being left too dry, again, overwatering, sitting in water, exposure to very hot, dry air, like maybe in a heating vent, or warm air coming in out of the blue, or let's just say exposure to cold drafts as a contrast to hot. Anything like that's radical and sudden. It could be too close to an AC and, same thing. Bud blast, air pollution from any source. Okay, so that includes, let's just say you have an aerosol sprayer or you have a room perfume thing that goes off on a timer, or motion detector, something that, does a little bit of aroma into the air when you've walked by. That is called air pollution, smoking as well. And what the mistakes I made not last year, yes, the winter of 2020 to 2021, 21 to 2022, sorry. I was so cold, I put a gas heater next to me so that I could work at my desk, and the vapors, the fumes from the gas took out almost 2 orchids. One of them is still recovering, but it's always dicey with that one. And it took out a few buds. So I haven't repeated that. I'm drinking hot chocolate like some kind of a maniac, but I still get bud blast because I've got cold drafts, simply because I do have to crack open my terrace door on occasions. So things happen that are in the line of fire. You get bud blast. Even if I try to make sure that my temperatures outside match with my temperatures inside, yeah, it's a thing. And bud blast can happen very quickly, or it's a slow process. And I have a fabulous picture, which of course here I don't have displayed. That is a nuisance. But I thought my pastoral innocence would also bloom for us in the beginning of 2022. And then They were almost opening, and I thought we were past the critical stage. Nope, we had bud blast. Same with my mailman. Roby, it's good to see you. Thank you so much for being here. I hope everything was fabulous for you in the past weekend. This one looks well known. Okay, this one is in actual fact Ninja Yellow. It came from the Orchid room, and she is gorgeous. She is a complex hybrid, but she is one of the ones with beautiful yellow blooms and a wonderful fragrance. But she really is missing her mama, because you see that droopy leaf that you can see up here. You see, that's just part of her character traits. That's not underwatering. I think she's just really missing her mama. She's growing okay, but she's not exactly happy to be in southern Spain. And this spike was one of the better spikes I've ever grown her with since I got her in 2020 before Brexit. And when this happened, I didn't even think that I had maybe 3 weeks of colder temperatures, and it still happened because her being in the line of fire, the terrace door is off to the left over there, and when I crack it open, yeah, that was the result. And then they look like shriveled prunes, which is very frustrating. This is a Phalaenopsis Hot Kiss. I bought her because I wanted a big lip orchid, and they weren't actually, let's say, on the market in the big box stores just yet. So I got her, and she blooms very nicely. I do. I grow in leca and self-watering, 80% of the collection. The rest is in lava rock or ceramis, hob materials, scrubby pads, you name it. Yes, but mainly leca. So I now know that she's a bit finicky, but she was not even tucked away. Like, she wasn't even close to where Ninja Yellow incurred bud blast. She was tucked away, but because my terrace door isn't very, very sealed solid, when I close it, a cold draft comes in through the gap. So her position for this year has changed. We'll see if it works or it doesn't. I am so sorry to hear that, Andy Land. If you have emojis on your device, please, all the violins of the emojis into the chat, just to have our little commemorations here for Andy Land. I'm so sorry. That is so sad. Oh, horrible. Yeah, so what I do, and I'm telling you all the little intricate details based on what I'm dealing with, because even the slightest little thing can cause bud blast. And when you think you've closed the room off or whatever, if there is even a teeny tiny kind of draft, this will happen. And then it's a matter of figuring out which orchids are more susceptible to it as opposed to others that really could care less, let's just say. Because not every Phalaenopsis is the same. Not every Oncidium is the same. Mine is blooming its guts out, and it is perfuming my area. I'm telling you, absolutely perfuming my area. It's beautiful. It's done really, really well. So sorry to hear that, Andy Land. Anyway, so just make sure that, it's a surprise that we ever get our orchids to bloom at all, considering everything that goes in with why they would incur bud blast. So it's easy to say, just avoid any possible stress to the plant and water properly. There you go. That is the answer to avoiding bud blast. But sometimes, like I was mentioning, the fact that the tiniest little thing can incur bud blast and you've done everything else right, well, just take heart. Just as long as the orchid is alive, there's always the next grow season. Now, to add to this, I want to maybe do a little bit of a debunk, and let me get into my debunk timestamp. I want to debunk the fact that, whoa, where's my timestamp? Hello, sorry about that, 4211. I know I'm probably shouting out different numbers, but that is because we have probably about a 12-second lag in the stream. Okay, so I want to debunk an orchid will not open its buds in a dark room. So the reason I can now debunk that, because my Fred Clacchiara After Dark was in the dark compared to what it is exposed to during the growing season with, I mean, the most amazing light you can imagine. You know, my shades need shades, otherwise I can't see. I'm squinting. I need double shades. And then it comes into a dark room, and it gets even darker as the winter progresses while it is forming a spike. Now, this is not to say that it may not happen with other orchids. So again, the general rule of orchid hobby growers, etc., there is no blanket statement that covers a certain topic based on all the variables. However, it is not true. That was my fear, that my buds will not open on my After Dark because of the lack of light. They all open beautifully. All right, so I want to put it out there that if you hear that, and let's just say you can't give your orchid enough light, there's a time frame where you will learn whether your orchid actually needs the light to open its buds, or if it's going to be okay and it will open its buds even if it doesn't have the maximum amount of light. Always bearing in mind that you will never get to the bud stage if your orchid doesn't get enough light while it grows. So keep that in mind. But once it's got buds and something happens in your life and you can't exactly provide blasting light because, you know, you bring your orchids inside, then know that it should be quite all right, and not all orchids will blast their buds or drop them simply because of lack of light. Right, now, for the next subject, unless anybody has any questions or wants to come up and tell me that maybe they've had other experience when it comes to how much light an orchid needs in order to open its buds, the best way to avoid bud blast is to break off the spike, because Anna, you nailed it. That is actually debunking what I've just said myself. That is a general global statement across the board. You can avoid bud blast by snapping your spike. That is the worst. Now people say the worst sound is when you snap a root. Not if you've got 10 other roots in the pot. Snapping a spike. You have one. Maybe if you're lucky, you have two. If you're very, very lucky, that one spike actually has the potential to branch. Oh, but no, that sound is horrible. Oh, I'm so sorry. Oh, I can really relate to that. So moving on to the next subject, which would be, I know this is an extremely, extremely technical way of saying it, but then I am extremely technical. Let me get my folder out and show you. I'm going to talk about spots on flowers. And you may now, hello, spots on flowers. Where's my folder, spots on flowers? You are kidding me. What happened? Okay, we're going to go with spots on flowers, but I'm going to go through another folder and find my spots on the flowers. Hold it. Oh, sorry. I hope that the algorithm doesn't pick that up. I do apologize. Patricia, hey, I know, I'm sorry. It's good to see you. Gosh, yeah, that is just, for me, it's one of the worst. Okay, so spots on flowers. Let's look at these blooms. I must have merged a few things here. Okay, let's pick up this. Where are you? And why did you do that? I'm telling you, some programs are weird. Okay, ready to share. It's good to see you. I know. I'm bad. Absolutely bad. Now, when I just said spots on flowers, I would like to know what's the first thought that came to your mind. Because yes, I'm going to get there. I promise I'll get there. But they're not all bad. Look at the spots on these buds. Isn't that amazing? Because sometimes when we see spots on our buds, it's already the messenger of bad news. It could be botrytis, it could be a pest those are the spots you need too, and all the funkiness that's going on. So this is Dendrobium nephits Alex Poli, going through an extremely stressful time, has all the influences I've just mentioned, dark, as well as, well, watering is fine, but, you know, cold drafts coming in, because now I know my weak points, even though I'm stuffing everything with towels at night. I'm always wary because bud blast, right? But you can see that this orchid, it's just not bothered. And I can tell you, since this image was taken, this spike is blooming out beautifully. Yes, it is a Latoria hybrid. Dendrobium nephits Alex Poli. So spots on buds, not blooms, spots on buds can look like this. There's nothing wrong with it. So let me take this away and not go get silly about it, but just because we don't want to, you know, just look at nasty things today all the time, let me at least share some pretty things, because spots on buds can look like this as well. And this is Lutein Blanc, Dendrobium Lutein Blanc, another Latoria type. And I have to say that these, you see, when we talk about the next subjects, keep these images in your mind, because it can get a little bit gross and nasty as we move along, because we can also see gnarly protrusions on these blooms up here, the buds, sorry. So you see all these bumps and things like that. So not only the spots, but we also have a little bit of protrusions, which at the beginning, one could be freaking out and saying that the orchid is deformed. No, some of them have all these fabulous characteristics, especially the Latoria type dendrobiums. They have these characteristics. So just keep in mind that the spots are part of the orchid when it makes sense, and when the bud is forming properly, naturally, beautifully. And you will know that because if it doesn't, the peduncle will start to go yellow, or even the bud itself is not going to look ripe, plump, and juicy. You won't have this effect of some kind of a thing about to pop open into a bloom. It'll start to get the grooves again. It'll have that groovy, almost papery look to it. That is then bud blast. But let's see here, just one more time. Ooh, these remind me of these fabulous exotic shoes that the fashion designers want us to wear, that they call stylish. I remember a pair of shoes like this, not that I owned them, but they were on a catwalk and I was like, yeah, maybe not. Incredible. Okay, so let me make sure that I've got my notes covered with everything, because I am going completely off memory. I'm not even using my notes, but let me check my notes. Okay, spots on buds will look like, and we're going to get on to the next subject, will be more obvious if it is a problem like botrytis. And botrytis is caused when persistently wet air is around the buds. All right, you can already identify botrytis on the buds from jump. You don't, and sometimes there's nothing wrong with the buds, but then you will see the bloom open eventually, and you'll see black spots in the blooms. I'm going to try and find an image for you, because personally, knock on glass, I'm on a glass desk, knock on glass, I have not had botrytis in my collection because of humidity and cold. Big two factors: humidity, cold, and not enough airflow. Cold temperatures, super invasive when it comes to botrytis. So, wow, considering what I have to deal with for 3 to 4 months of the year, yeah, touch wood and glass. Okay, so now if you spot botrytis to any further spread, because it's not going to just isolate itself and stay on that one bloom because, hello, I'm here, I like it, you know, that's it for me, I'm not moving. The spores will transmit to other blooms. So the best way, unfortunately, is to remove the flowers, the whole spike, everything from the plant. And that is possibly even blooms that do not have any sign of botrytis on them, that they look fine, but they're on the same plant, chances are the spores have already transmitted over to that nice looking bloom, and it's only a question of time. You don't want that to spread to other things in your collection, so the best thing is to cut the spike off. Now, I'm going to try and show you all these orchid aficionados that are in the chat probably have seen it, but if anybody were to stumble across this and you see live bites or something, let me get you some Botrytis blooms. And check the images. Ostras, I went to a Spanish. Okay, because we always look at Phalaenopsis, what we're going to do in this case is check out a beautiful Cattleya. It looks like a beautiful Purpurata. So whoever has this, it's a shame, but you see it right here. Oh, I'm not on the preview anymore, so I better not keep touching the screen, otherwise we'll be bouncing from page to page. So I picked out the first image that we can see because, gorgeous. I don't know, that's not a Carnea, maybe a Carnea alba. But anyway, you see that, and then this is of course massive. I mean, you know, never let it come to that. If you see it, an orchid looking like this, they haven't gotten black spots yet, take it off, cut the spikes. This is still, you know, this is already heading in the direction, and you can intervene in a timely manner. Cymbidiums get it as well. I never had it on my Cymbidiums. I had other issues with my Cymbidiums, but Botrytis was not one of them. So let me just make sure that I'm not missing out on comments here. I can't see. Patricia, how long, here's my 3 questions for you. How long have you had it? What is the parentage? And I mean had it, sorry, is it a seedling? Is it coming into its juvenile? Or how much light is it getting? Because they can take a heck of a lot of light, surprisingly so. So I'm sorry that that comment is all the way up there, Patricia, but I'll keep an eye for you to answer that. Because I got a Laturia type, my Naphrix, not my Naphrix, Alex Poli, but I got my Lutines Blanc, and that was a tiny, tiny seedling. Let me get to my folders again. Now, let me just talk about this hypothetically, because clearly my folder is empty, and I would have to go here again. Let me just see. So I got my Lutines Blanc. It was a tiny little seedling, and it took 3 years, exactly 3 years for it to start, for it to bloom. And then there's also Alex Poli is about the same size of yours, and you've had it since 2019. It's about the same. Naphrix Alex Poli. Okay, same size. Okay, since 2019. 1 year for acclimating. So did you get it? Did you get it at blooming size or near blooming size? So 1 year for acclimation brings us to 2020. If it was near blooming size, that would be taking us to 2021. If I dare make a prediction, yours should be a blooming size by now, just guesstimating. And then, because a new growth will not bloom within the same year, the following season, that growth will bloom. So 2023, I'm predicting your growths of 2022 will bloom. It is only after that that then older growths will start to branch from their canes to bloom, if that makes any sense at all. Light, water, warmth. Yeah, Asen, whereas the warmth, I can't provide the warmth. My Alex Poli right now has got minimum light, well, water, because our roots are always wet, but I keep them, let's say, damp. I'm not filling the reservoir per se. And warmth. Now, when it when it comes to the growing season, this is the beauty about the Laturia dendrobiums. You can chuck everything at them, the light, the water, and the warmth, and then you will still get a pretty blooming when the conditions are not as favorable. They're super forgiving. So Patricia, I'm going to look out for your comments, and I hope that that kind of helps. If you think that there's still something that you want to address, then please mention that. I'm going to keep an eye on them comments. Make sure that I close out my screens here, because you can tell we're moving on to the next subject, which is crown. Hang on a second. My Spanish sun is definitely enough, yes, and I have to say that as a matter of fact, mine have to be in super bright shade. Okay, there you go. It's near blooming size, sounds about right. There we go. All right, so keep an eye out for your growths of 2022. Watch them for 2023. Know that it'll be another 12-month, 11-month period before you should see any spikes. My spikes actually appear in October, and they're only now open. So you can see October, November, December, like 8 to 10 weeks approximately. But when you see the spike, it should be fall. Would be interesting if that works out. That would be super interesting. So I'm on 58.25. Because we're going to go to crown rot, eek, stem rot, and stem rot, collar rot, depending on how you want to formulate it. So let me grab my folder. It's a big one. And it's probably going to be a little bit all over the place because I have a lot of different images. We may be cutting over a few, and let me wait for this folder to load up because it's like going, you seriously want me to upload all of this? Yes, I want you to upload all of this. Please be so kind. I know we're pushing it, but I can tell. Okay, here we go. Perfect. And how many images do I have? Not all of them. So what we're going to start with is this one here. Only uploaded 3, but it's good enough. Maybe it'll do. Maybe we don't need to go into the extremes. But now this is clearly an orchid that I am still mourning because I cannot tell you why this happened. This is Phalaenopsis nube, big white Phalaenopsis, big lip white Phalaenopsis. I have a 2.0 now called Romeo's nube. And this Phalaenopsis was transitioned with all the precautions in mind that I was talking about when it comes to how I'm now able to successfully grow my orchids. Now, this is not necessarily crown rot. This could be stem rot. This could be anything rot. It can't be cold because that is completely different. If it's cold, then not all the leaves would have fallen off so fast, so quickly, and I would have been able to save something here, but it just went quick. It started with a single leaf. So if you consider, you would say, okay, this looks like cold damage. That is possible for one leaf, but that was maybe the 4th leaf to the top that fell off before it got to this stage. So everything was going well with this orchid, growing beautiful roots. And let me see if the second folder has all that, because if that is the case, we are switching folders just so that you can see I am not fibbing you, because this is always something that can happen and you're scratching your head, and that's why I'm bringing it up in this live stream in case anybody is like going, oh my goodness, my leaf looks like this. Is it going to end up killing the orchid? Because the end result would be this. And that is Phalaenopsis nube 4 weeks later. So I'm still mourning this orchid, and you can see that the first leaf started to do that, and you can see how beautiful the crown is. Chris Schmitz, Orchid Ninja San, how are you? Oh, it's wonderful. And 65. That is great. I'm very glad to hear that. That is awesome. Yeah, today would be, in Germany, we left our Christmas tree up until the 6th. That's how we used to do it. From the 24th, when we put it up, all the way to the 6th. So, yeah, but I can understand wanting to clean the area and freshen it up. So you can see that this orchid had absolutely no signs of distress. Nothing wrong with the crown. The roots were growing beautifully. This was maybe 6 weeks before the first leaf on the end started to die back. So all around this orchid, from every angle, she was growing beautiful roots. These roots had already gone into the pot. And then this happened. So I thought, well, normal. We've transitioned the orchid. You can see at the base here how the roots have gone into the pot. These two green lush ones are new roots absorbing water from the other angle of the orchid. And I'm thinking, yeah, that's normal. You know, the lower leaf gets dropped. It's been a stressful couple of months for her. We've got roots. Perfect. But no, within a very short period of time, you saw the other images. I'm going to stop. I'm not going to be bouncing back and forth from the page, but the orchid is dead. Now, this happened, in my opinion, out of the blue. I have no explanation for it. And Fernanda Nathimen to Orchids and Succulents was so sweet in the video to say that some orchids just kill themselves because they perform too fast, too quickly, and then there's nothing left. And that can happen. Absolutely. Now, normally when you have stem rot, this is what you see. On the monopodial, okay? When we're talking stem rot, collar rot, that is a monopodial. You would see your leaves dying in from the inside out, not the outside in. That would be stem rot. However, this orchid got rot because of pests. Whoops, that is too close. And why are you pixelating? Anyway, you can see the gaggle of scale. Maybe if I reduce the screen, I'll show you exactly where to look. You can see the gaggle of scale in there. This is my beloved unicorn. I haven't replaced her, but this orchid was doing fabulously. So be super, super careful about what happens to your orchids, because stem rot is not necessarily you doing something wrong, especially when it comes to monopodial orchids and the little leaf joints are super tight. And then pests can get in there unbeknownst to you, because I was not aware that scale had an affinity for Phalaenopsis. And well, that's it. Hybrids, they kill themselves. They kill themselves. You see, I have never experienced that phenomenon. That was novel to me. I accepted it because it was like, well, I've got no other explanation. What am I going to tell you? I had no clue, especially if the roots were growing into the pot. It made no sense to me, but, you know, until I don't get the light bulb moment where I figure out, oh no, it was this, that, and the other, that's what I'm going to stick with. That's my story, and I will update it should I get another, you know, revelation of what happened. But this is an example on this orchid that the pests took out the stem and killed the leaves, and bit by bit rot kicked in because of environmental issues, and then the orchid is gone. Nothing you did was wrong or untoward. So, you know, complacency is one of the worst enemies of the orchid hobbyists, and now I know my orchids are being super, let's say, garlic alcohol painted, because this is not happening again. Meanwhile, we'll get to that. Don't think that just because the structures are all beautifully protected, if there is a spike on an orchid that is protected by garlic alcohol, trust me, the bugs will find a way up the spikes. They will find a way to get there. So now all my spikes are protected and painted by garlic alcohol. It's ridiculous, I know. But if this is what I have to do in my climate, this is what I have to do in my climate. Another reason how you can get stem rot, collar rot, is, for example, when the roots come out, and I had a little bit of a thinking that may have happened also with Nubem, not entirely sure, but the roots come out and they puncture the tissue of the leaves because, you know, monopodial roots, and then they cause a huge rip and hole in the tissue. If you are in an area with super high humidity, know that as the root punctures through, everything should callus over, but it is not always the case. Even if your monopolium is facing face down, you've mounted it, everything is pouring away from the crown, that is not a guarantee you won't have stem rot if you have persistent rain, long durations of rain, including extremely high humidity. The orchid is going to throw out roots like there's no tomorrow, but the orchid will have punctured its own membranes and cells where pathogens and a lot of wet can enter if the timing is wrong. You say that maybe high airflow will deal with that problem. Not all the time. Not if you've got 95% humidity, you got monsoon rains, there is no chance for anything to really dry out. So keep that in mind. It's not always your fault. It's not always something that you did wrong. Sometimes the orchid itself goes all, because of its growth habits, will induce wounds that are necessary, but they won't heal in time if conditions are a little bit too favorable. Let's just put it that way. Because I dream of a climate that has 95% humidity and persistent rain. I do. I love it. I would be out there all day, every day. Let my hair go to a complete frizz. So don't be upset. And also, candidates like these. This is my beautiful sorpresa, my little ugly duckling, who eventually will be a pretty, pretty swan. Know that if you cut back a leaf or whatever, if it is slightly yellow, don't think that that is immediately crown rot. Obviously, this is a very bad situation, especially if you've got damaged cells, including left and right of the crown, which is sunburn. Any damaged cells can be an axis for pests. So make sure that in a situation like this, don't worry about it, but don't keep the orchid somewhere where it's very, very humid. Plenty of airflow. Let a highly sun-damaged leaf or structure dry out. Don't cut it out. Do not induce more wounds on something that's already wounded. Let it dry out. Get that done as quickly as possible. Not applying a hairdryer. That's not what I mean. Let the air take care of it naturally. Just do not induce another wound simply because you've got something and you think, oh, I've got to cut that off. See how far any damage spreads before you do any cutting, all right? And then we know, treat with cinnamon, or if you are in a very, very precarious area where cinnamon could affect roots, we don't want to affect roots, use dragon's blood or the something indigo, Gentian's violet, not indigo, it's the color, but Gentian's violet, or something that is more commonly maybe in your house. Iodine will also work if you're in tight spaces and you want to stop any form of rot. Get those bactericide, fungicide tinctures into those crevices. But if it's a sunburn, don't, because this orchid is now doing wonderfully. She's got 2 new leaves and, well, this could have very, very quickly turned into crown rot if I had started slicing away anything that looked unsightly. If I'm not about the you are a risk taker, okay? All right. Well, if you have the environment and, sometimes you have to take risks. Speaking of risks, I have to bring in Anselia africana in. Thank you for that. Note to self, bring in Anselia africana. Because I am a risk taker as well. I push my orchids sometimes, willingly to the limit, because only then can I understand what they cannot take. And out of 4 Anselia africanas, 1 does not appreciate temperatures down to 12 degrees Celsius, whereas many of them can handle it. So that one is looking a little bit rough. I kid you not. It's a little, if it blooms, it's going to look like, okay, pretty much like my After Dark right now. Looks amazing, but it's just a leafless structures. Okay, you've got 30 minutes drive. Very far in the north of the Netherlands, close to Zult. Oof. Yeah, no. Thank you, Asen. Thank you. It's a thought that counts. Hand hearts. Nothing personal. Unless you have one of those beautiful summers, then I'm all over it. Then I'm all over the North Sea with ice cream and that beautiful satay. Yeah, I'm having that. So yeah, anyway. Do not put damage onto your orchids if you don't have to, when we're talking about rot. So here we have a classic example of a giraffe. Phalaenopsis, novelty Phalaenopsis, that's not with us anymore, incurred stem rot. Even though I could never see the rot, the leaf said to me, something's not right down there. I never ever saw anything foul, smelly, decaying, declining, nothing. I saw new plants, new plants, new plants, blooms, and then this. And then it was 4 or 5 months later, she was gone. Now, cold temperatures, lack of light. Light is something that some orchids need so that they can actually photosynthesize, feed themselves, etc. And it can be that lack of light, of course, lack of photosynthesis reduces whatever the energy the orchid specifically needs. And that doesn't apply across the board to every single novelty Phalaenopsis hybrid either. It actually manifests itself when conditions get a little bit tough. So not every novelty Phalaenopsis is going downhill because there's not enough light. Unfortunately, we only find out about these situations once we find ourselves in the situation. So take heart. It doesn't mean you can't grow novelty Phalaenopsis, or in my case, it's not like every single novelty Phalaenopsis in my collection is dying. 8 on a heat mat at night, 8.2. But yes, they're on a heat mat. Big difference. The heat mat radiates a little bit of an exterior heat around the foliage. And the Cattleya purpuratas, I'm pushing mine as well, Patricia, into the 12-degree digits, which is not a problem, but my day temperatures are not reaching the warmth that they would reach out in nature, even though my night temperatures are. So I'm kind of observing these orchids. Not, I can't be bothered to bring them in and out, but there are some I want to really push, because if they can handle what they're being thrown at right now, I don't have to keep dividing them, and I can grow them on into bigger orchids instead of just, my maximum 20 centimeter pots. And that is what I would like to do. But I was very surprised about my Ansella africana, the new growths of the 2022 season, the leaves, yep, they cold damage, and they look like they've been through a bushfire. Exactly. They need a lot of light. Well, there you go. You grow them on a heater. Perfect. You see, they need that much light. Now, thankfully, mine have started pushing some sheaths before the fall, winter started to hit. But my interest is to see that, yes, they can tolerate low temperatures. I'm growing in leca and self-watering, which cools down the roots even more because of evaporative cooling. But my day temperatures are about 20 degrees Celsius. And for the conversion buffs here, 20 degrees, 68. And that is not every day. And if it reaches that, it's maybe only for an hour and a half. Not enough, because purpuratas out in nature can drop really, really low in temperatures, but their day temperatures are so lovely and very, very mild. So if you're not sure about stem rot and what it looks like, if you're uncertain, for example, as was the case with my giraffe, let me show you what you need to look for in case you're thinking you may have stem rot. In comparison to the bright yellow of the leaf that we see on the giraffe, it is beautiful and bright. It looks like an old leaf is dying back. In comparison, you will see something that looks a little bit translucent. It is off. It is not clean. It has, and don't, this here is root damage right here, okay? When I mentioned to you, a root pierces through tissue, it does damage to itself. It doesn't callus over quickly enough. So all that applies because of this little bit right here. Not saying it happened to this specific leaf, but this is looking from the inside out, okay? So you can see how that leaf was wrapped around the stem. So that would have been the attempted puncture wound of a root. It didn't make it because I peeled the leaf off prematurely. But up here we also see a body of scale. Thankfully it's dead. So, the orchid is so far so good. I believe this is from a Zogovivian, if I'm looking correctly. It's possible that it is Zogovivian because I had scale issues with her this year. But you can see how the rot, it's lost a bright color. Now, not all leaves die back with a bright yellow, but there is a certain richness in the tone of the color to distinguish between rot and something dying back because of old age, okay? And once again, especially if the concentration of the discoloration is around the stem, anything discolored, abnormal looking, like this, translucent, it could be wet if I squeezed it. If I were to squeeze, let's say, excuse you, my mouse is getting ahead of itself. If I were to squeeze, let's say, this area right here, the one I could reach before peeling the leaf off, if I were to squeeze that, it would feel a little bit soft. A leaf that is dying back because of old age doesn't have that texture. It doesn't have the gummy kind of texture. It's icky. It's a silicone. It gives texture. If you push too hard, it'll squish, you know, and you don't want to get there. Not like that, okay? So it doesn't have to be vibrant. It doesn't, leaf dying back doesn't always have to be vibrant, but the visual changes, all right? And let me see if the backside, the other side, not the backside, the other side doesn't give a better perspective, but you can see a puncture wound here from a root. Not saying that that's why the leaf went downhill. In my estimation, this was because of scale. So let's go to a monopodial that is pretty obvious. And spoiler alert, not that I filmed this because I have some serious issues during the days these days. I can't get around to filming. Spoiler alert, my Didieri is not with the collection anymore. I took the pot, the orchid top has been vacated, and it was stem rot. And out of the blue. Out of the blue. I cannot tell you. The roots were fine. I looked at it every single day because I'm wary about this orchid because I used to have fertilizing issues. So this was a before the leaf drop picture. And then this is the after the leaf drop picture. And you can see that it has had several attempts of trying to bloom. So this is a 2021 image. 2 spikes, and well, I kind of stopped documenting it enough. I haven't checked my Didieri folder for a while because when I saw what had happened the other day, so the leaf had dropped from the one day to the next. All these leaves were lying down here on the orchid top, gone. It was, I was shocked. Now, my over-fertilization regime was, this is another reason that certain orchids have leaf tip dieback, which we'll get to a little bit further on, but this is over-fertilization, new leaf, can't handle it, and I'm thinking, well, lots of light, warming up, spring, let's get on with it, let's fertilize. I was doing it very conservatively because slow grower. Still, it was too much for this Didieri. Now, since then, she grew a lot more and a lot better. But this year I had the same phenomenon again this season. And that is, I'm telling you all this because that is why I'm watching my Didieri daily. Because I had the same situation with a leaf, the newest one, happened to be on this side as well, but more up the orchid. And I was watching the decline and I thought, stop, because this would look like rot. And I left this one and come on. And I left this one, I didn't cut it because my experience with previously cutting leaves off is that they would eventually decline anyway. So I left it and watched it. Same up here. Now this one you can see I cut off. I lost this leaf even though I cut it off thinking rot, cold temperatures, blah, blah, blah. Okay, same happened this year, lost the leaf to the point that I'm like, okay, my crown is still okay. The next day, the top leaf coming out was brown at the tip within the next day, 24 hours, that leaf was gone as well. On the third day, I kid you not, I looked at her again. The leaves were around the orchid top. The stem was brown. Not brown as in crusty brown, but brown as in this translucent color brown. I just looked at it and I thought, don't dwell on it. Don't think about it. Don't hold on to the pot. Forget filming this. Just, because sometimes out of sight, out of mind, it doesn't hurt so bad. I was shocked. So my analysis in this case is possibly a misting issue on my part. And I'm not saying misting and that's why my crown went. I'm not saying that. I'm saying misting and that's why my stem went, because we have these puncture wounds from spikes. All right. Now, to my understanding, I have enough light on this orchid. If she's weakened by the temperatures, which is probably another issue, then I don't have enough light for this orchid. I could also have had her way too stressed from the experience of my spring 21-22. That was just diabolical and insane, the worst ever. And it never picked up and recovered through the summer months, through the growing season. And then here we are again, similar situation, and it took the orchid out. And it's cold. So a lot of factors. Sometimes when the stem rot happens, it's not a slow process, okay? And sometimes you can intervene. There was nothing to salvage on this. When you have a slow growing orchid, you can think, okay, the rot was from that spike all the way down. Okay? This root was still fabulous. That was the surprising fact. But I could say, okay, cut this off, put this all into some kind of an ICU setup. On slow growing orchids, for me, it just doesn't work. I don't have the facilities. I don't have the means. So that's why I'm not holding on to the pot. I have to really pay attention to my orchids at the moment. And I don't need this standing around until I can film a video going, gone. So yeah, these are all circumstances that can affect collar rot and stem rot. Now, I got this image in from Granny Franny back in the day. When we're talking about rot as such, we might as well address the issue as far as I'm concerned, because it can happen anyway, anywhere. All right. Now, it doesn't matter why it happened. And this was at a time when it was warm. So you're seeing water on the leaves and everything should be fine. And you would think, no, actually turn it around. It was warm. Just to put that into perspective and into context, the temperatures were warm, plenty of airflow. It wasn't the water on the leaves that caused the issues that you're seeing here. So Granny Franny, okay, I'm just going to have a look before I continue. Sometimes I was, and the conditions, Anna, the conditions. I'm not gonna lie, because if I had the facility and capability, that orchid wouldn't be, since the spring of 2022. It wouldn't have had this stress. So, I had a similar experience with the Dendrobium prasinum. I guess it depends on what circumstances you can change. In the wintertime, they are much more fussy because of the lack of light. Exactly. So thank you for letting me know. That's an orchid I won't be touching. I can't. My collection is doing its thing, and I'm observing. I'm learning a lot, but it's doing its thing, and it's in a process of evolution. So Granny Franny sent me this picture here, and then I communicated with her back and forth. And when I give advice over email from the Orchid Details form, etc., or Orchid Ninjas, I give instructions, I draw the lines, and I show what needs to be done. And most of you will probably know this as well. But the question was here, the problem was already quite advanced, and you would think, is this savable? This is a new growth. It's just bad. But told her where to cut. This is definitely a time to cut. Whereas I said before, don't cut, let it dry out. This was not going to dry out. This was spreading. You could see how bad it was up here, to the point I told her to cut the pseudobulb right there. Get rid of all of the tissue right up here, okay? There's no messing around with a sharp blade, as I suggest, along these dotted lines right here. That off, just, you know, solves the problem quickly. Cinnamon, it's a clean cut. Whew, deep breath, okay? So in this instance, the attempt is to go into the greenest tissue as far as possible without trying to detach the center vein, if possible. If not, sacrifice that. But get in there and then douse with cinnamon. And the same thing would have been along this line right here. Get rid of this side, because in situations like this, with the rot spreading, you've got that funky little texture between the fingers. Again, you don't want to squeeze too hard, otherwise the liquid starts to ooze. If you get that texture between your fingers, cut. If you don't, leave it, all right? So this was like an emergency surgery. She did that. I advised her to put a paper towel all around the surface of the pot, dampen the paper towel so that she can be liberal with the cinnamon application, which you can see she has been, and the paper towel absorbs the cinnamon and nothing falls on any exposed roots. So it may take 2, it may take 10 paper towels, but this way you can do a certain surgical procedure and get the rot out, and you can be generous with the cinnamon instead of worrying about tiptoeing around any kind of exposed roots, root tips, velamen, okay? So I believe this orchid is doing fine. I haven't got any feedback, but no news is good news, is what my dad always used to say. If you don't hear from Nina, she's fine. Meanwhile, that's changed as well, because now if you don't hear from me, it's because you don't want to know. Okay, let me timestamp this, and then if you're still with me, let me know in the comments if you want me to continue. There's going to be a 12-second lag, dead air, while I wait to know if you want me to continue. Let me just give you, we've just finished 3. Did we get to folder number 3? Oh no, we're halfway through. Let me know. We're halfway through. I'll be hitting point number 5, and we can make this a 2-part. Yes, please, says Roby. Okay, we'll go on to Michelle. Oh, it took a question like that to bring you out. Fantastic. Hey, it's good to see you, Michelle. I hope that you're doing well, and wherever you are, I hope that you're warm. I was watching the Buffalo blizzard. Oh my goodness. It's not the Buffalo blizzard, it's the United States blizzard. Cyclonic Arctic bomb, or whatever you want to call it. Yikes, I was watching that thing come in. I mean, I exclude Canada because, oh, Patricia, that's sweet, thank you. I kind of exclude Canada, which isn't fair. It's, you know, they also, get it extremely cold all the time. But if anybody is used to it and prepared, yeah, they are. As opposed to some of the states down south that, well, my word, my sympathies go right there. I was so glad I was not part of that. Now, let me make sure I close out those folders, and let me see if I can, upload all these folders, because I want to go on to the topic of spots on leaves. I wonder if this is going to upload all at the same time. Oops, I'm being asked, do you really want to do this? I'm like, no. So we're going to break it down. Let me see if I can be selective. And if we get the right, yeah, we'll start with that. Yay, Teehafen. Oh, yums. You have a friend up in Cold Lake, Canada. Is everything okay? So while my folder decides if it's going to upload and get me into what I want it to do, please I'm going to ask a welfare check. Is everybody that's watching and not typing okay? You don't have to expose yourself. just know that I care, even about the ones that aren't typing, because that was horrendous. Or maybe still is. Apparently it's still ongoing in some of the states. Then, I tell you, my heart goes out to you. All right, so let's go to spots on leaves. Let's have a look at some blooms. All right, now, no shade into orchids and ADD if you see this, okay? But it is an example because I have a folder that has 31 pictures. I don't want to go through them all, so I'm going to try and be selective, seeing as even my folder asked me, do I really want to do this? And I was like, okay, well, maybe not. We might be here all night. Anyway, keep it moving, keep it moving. Right, so have I got my timestamp? I think so. We'll find out. Anyway, so Oncidium Sweet Sugar. What a doll she's been. She's been the sweetest, and I love it. You've been 48. That is acceptable. Yes, I can see that. That is acceptable. Good stuff. All right, so you can see that she's doing fabulously on her mount, and I'm pushing this orchid to her limits as well. She is outside. She has only brought in one. I know, I'm sorry, Anna. Sorry. She has only been brought in one night so far. So she's new to my collection. I need to know her limits. Now, when I look for cold damage, of course, I look to see what tissue damage is happening. Is there anything happening on the leaf tips? We'll probably get to that maybe in another live. Depends on, how long you guys want me to keep going. But this is not cold damage, okay? So she's doing fine, and it's been the 12 degrees, as mentioned previously, 57 degrees Fahrenheit. But what we see here are two examples of what's been going on. The only reason I can 100%, or maybe three, the only reason I can 100% identify one of the reasons is because Insa told me so. Because to see the black marks, the striations that you see there, and he said this orchid was infected with scale, and that when I received her, I should separate her out, etc., etc. Sandy, can't you see? Ay, 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 ay. Hey, Sandy, it's good to see you. I hope you're doing okay, girl. Woohoo! Greenhouse. The things sweet dreams are made of. So I would not have anticipated this black damage to be scale damage, but this is the kind of spotting that an Oncidium will do, whether it's clear of scale or whether it has had scale. Some hybrids will always show signs of spotting. It's just the way that they've been bred, Too much going on. Everything's going a bit bananas with the hormones and the gene pool. So, but I know that this is scale because Yinsa told me so. Meanwhile, I didn't get an orchid with scale. She was beautifully clean. She has never had scale since I've had her. She came clean, so, like I said, no shade. But what you see next to it right there is something that I'm not entirely sure if Insa is aware of, because we also have the same symptoms right here. And my experience this year, now there's two things going on here, okay? My experience this year has been the first time ever thrips. Never seen thrips in my life. And the first time ever mites. And I can't even tell you spider mites because I've never seen cobwebs. My fingers never turned orange on all those symptoms you're supposed to be looking out for. So I was taken completely, off guard. But this looks like thrips damage to me. However, I have another orchid, which is the Colmenara Masai Red or the Oncostelle Wild Cat, that also has these imperfections in the leaves, which could be considered also a virus, which is another folder, maybe for tonight, or if we do a part 2. But there are so many things going on in this orchid. When we talk about spotting, our mind immediately goes to, oh, black spots, black spots. No, spotting is anything that is out of the norm and unusual and doesn't really fit in with the overall scheme of the orchid as such. So either this is thrips, then that would have happened in my collection, or this is just from overbreeding. There's nothing to worry about. The orchid is growing really, really well. I've got another new growth coming right here. I've had 2 spikes. One came out right here. Thank you very much, Inse. That was his doing. The growth that I matured in my care is this one right here. It's blooming. Happy days. Another new growth is coming right here. The orchid is doing great. These are the kinds of things that I think when it looks like this, and this orchid was nowhere near where the thrips were. I know. The orchid was nowhere near where the thrips were. This is part of its little genetic kink, let's just say. Nothing to be concerned about. The same applies with my Colmenara Masai Red, growing like a beast. Maybe not like a beast anymore for other reasons, but the leaves will do that. Oncostella Wildcat, growing well after I almost killed it after rescuing it. I know, my bad. But she's growing well, has all these little things going on in the leaves. That's just what Oncidiums do. My holiday was fine. Thank you for asking, Sandy. I hope yours was as well. All right, so I've got this one and then I've got this one. Now, when you see spotting like this is alarming, all right? This is a Panarica brassavole, but anyway, this is spotting, this is a fungus, it is a bacteria, it is whatever it is, it's not going away. It's not going away when I use a bactericide. Up here we have dead scale. That was wiped off before the orchid went inside, but while I was at it, when I was treating the orchid, I thought, let's take a picture. Anyway, so this is concerning, okay? If this spreads to other orchids, if it cannot be contained on the orchid itself. It's a huge shame that I got this orchid with this stuff already on it. This is an old growth back here. Yellowing, the leaf will eventually die off. And eventually, this one was also on the orchid when I got it. It had little spots and then they increased. On this part right here, I decided to take the plunge and cut off any of the newer ones that were starting to develop on this growth, and this growth down right underneath it, cut it off as well. And I couldn't contain it. So I've been using fungicides, not copper, otherwise I wouldn't be able to show you this orchid. She'd be dead, like many of my other copper victims are. So I did not use copper. If that is the last resort, I'm not going to touch it. So far, I see in the 2 years I've had this orchid, I have not seen this spread to any other orchid but the one that she came in the box with, and thankfully not touching my Monachica, Pratins. Or Assam orchids. This is Pratins. This came from Pratins orchids, and I got the Prismatocarpa from Pratins in Belgium as well. So the 2 Panaricas are having this. In the box was the Monachica, doesn't have it. Now, when it comes to situations like this, it is it's a personal one. I know, we say that is not my get out clause. So my personal choice is never to cut anything off. You don't want to add into wounds. However, when it comes to situations like this, whoa, give me my mouse back. When it comes to situations like this, you have to test your options. So I did cut 2 growths. And then the newest growth of 2022, yeah, that's this one, grew clean and suddenly showed this. And I was like, yeah, okay, well, as long as you don't spread somewhere else, then I am going to keep you. But you can see how soggy it is in here. So my next thought is just to see what one of these blisters would do. The center is dry, the outer part is wet. So what I was going to do, just to see what one of these blisters would do, is I'm going to take a pin, and I'm actually going to poke little holes all around the blister that you see. And then I'm going to put, one of them will have dragon's blood in it. I'm going to rub dragon's blood so that they can penetrate into the cells, into the little pin pricks, and the other one I'm going to rub cinnamon into and see what happens. I mean, might as well, no? She bloomed for me the first time this year, so yeah, she looks ugly, but my get out clause has always been I don't grow for shows. But you see, spotting on orchids can sometimes be, don't worry about it, and then, sorry, hi. And then the other part would be, this is dangerous business and you have to be extremely vigilant as to what is going on. Right, so here we have another example. This is another one that was, thank you so much, from Bamanana. I appreciate that I can use these images. All right, so she came and asked about spotting on her orchids, and especially one, so I picked this one as an example to give her a little bit of peace of mind or some insight. Yeah, it's my get out clause, Patricia. Trust me, I would love to have pristine leaves, but no. Yes, it is, and that's why I'm kind of like, you know, they are not separated out. My shelves are a little bit too tight. It's a risk I am taking. It's a calculated risk. But I'll have to see what happens when I do the little pin prick, etc. So here we have spotting on orchids, which is anthocyanin. That's a lot of light. There's no issues right there. On the same orchid, we have spotting and some kind of imperfections. It started out as spotting and then it sort of merged. I don't know if you can see that. But to me, that is something that's kind of like the sign of an older part of the structure is starting to absorb. The cells are starting to collapse. There's nothing really going on here. It's not on a new growth. I believe it's a slow dieback of an old leaf. However, when we go over here, whoa, give me my mouse back. When we go over here, we can see where I pointed with the arrow. All right. Now that's a different thing. That to me is cold damage. All right, so the spotting on cold damage can start like, let's say, sunburn. It can be a blanket thing, or it can come in increments, something I should show you, and I hope the folder still has that, because that's a funny sunburn. I was not expecting that. But so this is where it gets too hot, too much light, not enough airflow, starts out as spotting, and if the threat is not, if it's not removed from the threat, it will actually, you know, merge into one big thing. So take it away from the stress, the threat being sunlight in this case, and normally the cells will recover. If the damage was too much, of course, they won't recover. You will have that blemish for the duration of the leaf. Patricia's orchids. Unfortunately, in the winter, my orchids have to be closed. It can't be, yep. There you go. Aquí también, here as well. So let me just see what my folder has in store for us, because I really do want to show you without bouncing back and forth. But there's so many variables when it comes to spotting, and I don't want people to just, you know, resort to the black spotting. That means that doesn't mean anything. In the one case you saw, it was nothing, it was irrelevant. Especially on oncidiums, things happen. In other case you saw, that is a danger when you see like a blister or something happening and it just continues to spread and spread and spread. Now, this is an area here, Botrytis, and you can see spotting as well right here. This orchid is not supposed to look like this. It should have a dark green or a lighter green, depending on how much light this orchid gets. Now, spotting can come as a form of malnutrition. Let me just say it that way. Lack of correct nutrient balance. Trying to sound professional here, it's not working. Let me have a sip of my water. The frog wants to get ahead of me. So, in instances like this, especially when it comes to inorganic growing, we always pride ourselves in saying, I've got complete control of my nutrients, and then I know how much is going in, and blah, 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 blah. Well, it's also going to expose you very, very quickly if you get your nutrient balance wrong. So this would be a magnesium deficiency in this orchid. The leaf tip dieback right here is another little topic if we don't get to that, but that is lack of humidity in some cases, not all the time. For this orchid it is, but what you see with all the spotting here, if you see something like this and it's not normal, you may, this is not a virus, it's another folder, you may actually have a nutrient imbalance, and more often than not, in cases like these, it's magnesium. Easily remedied, Epsom salt soak. It'll take a little bit of time to correct itself. On the older leaves, it may never correct itself, but at least on the new growths, etc., then it will correct itself. So This orchid, as far as I'm concerned, will always show the spotting in my collection because it starts to mature its growth during the colder months of the year, as in right now, and there is no way I'm sitting it into a soak of the roots. Not when it's cold, not when there's enough light. So, yeah. Okay, Asen, thank you. So I have a conundrum. I live with it. The orchid blooms for me. It looks imperfect. However, in my little part of the world and on my channel, I will always explain that my circumstances are the way they are. I see what is going on. If I can change them, I will. If I can't, this is what is going on for specifically with this orchid. And then there are some others because they are using the nutrients from the older leaves to pump them, the mobile ones, into the newer growth simply because of a deficiency. Okay, but I will always make that disclaimer in my videos. And if it is, of course, a mistake on my part, it should never have come to this. That is the early stages that I recognize that by the time I could make a difference about it, it's too late. And then during the summer, the CalMags, the Epsom salt soaks that I do apply don't have enough time to make reverse the effect. Okay, so yeah, it's a great example though to be able to be talking about spots on leaves and people say it's a virus. No, it's not. Let me tell you why. Because the blooms are perfect. They don't last very long, but that's again what the orchid does. Doesn't have long-lasting blooms. Right. Patricia says, I do have 4-inch fans gently blowing through my closely packed orchid. And that's right, because another thing is, of course, closely packed and lots of things can spread and it's like a highway to danger and disaster and going straight forward. Let me check my folder so I don't keep repeating myself. I'm just going to show some little ones just to break it up a little bit. If this were a quiz, let me just say what's going on here, what went wrong here. I'm just going to go on mute. The dogs are about to bark. Let me know in the comments what's going on with this leaf. All right, sorry about that. I think they can settle down now a little bit. This is, yes, Anna, this is sunburn. Again, sorry for the dead air. I do apologize. Yeah, no, this is sunburn. And then dead cells, of course. After that, of course, the cells collapsed. They didn't recover. And it only started out, the sunburn looked like this. When I recognized it, I thought, scale, because this is a little cakey. I was like, no, please, no scale. So I treated her for the scale, etc. Until I touched the leaf, I was like, oh my gosh. Yeah, so it was a little bit more than that. It was just a little blister. And I was surprised that this one couldn't take so much of it because she is a prolific anthocyanin producer. Okay, so unfortunately, my little cakey got singed. But I want to show you something else just because, cute. Why not? What's going on here? And I'm not going to do too much dead air. Thank you for loading this one. I'm going by single images now simply because my folder is telling me, no, you're not. What's going on here? I mean, this spot here is a treated scale. He just hasn't been wiped off yet. And it's not fair. question is not fair. There's nothing wrong with this. It's just so cute and mottled. Sorry. Spotting on leaves. There's nothing wrong with this. There's no deficiency, even though there is no solid color. Never forget that some orchids, especially when it comes to funky hybrids, one leaf will do one thing depending on how much light they get, and another leaf on the same orchid will look completely different. And you might think, oh, what is this? It's the leaf on the sunburn feels a little bit dry. It's not crunchy, but if I were to poke my finger through it, I could leave a dry hole. Yay, it's perfect. Exactly. So, you know, sometimes we can give our orchids more light, and then a leaf will look completely different to the one next door, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. And this is Aurora 2.0. So happy that she is throwing a spike. Whether I'm going to let her bloom or not is another thing. So I'm going to go down my folder just to make sure that I expose everything in my collection that is of help, of use, also of a variety. There you go, Patricia. Look at it and enjoy. They're absolutely gorgeous. I love it when that happens. And I do say that, and that helped to have them out from September, even though my patio was like, I couldn't work, I couldn't move. They were everywhere, but that extra light up until they had to come in because the night temperatures dropped too low. Some of the things I've seen, it's just changed the way I look at my phals. I'm like, oh, I love you. So this is Phragmipedium Garin Weaver. Look at this orchid. Oh my goodness. No pats on my back for this orchid. Absolutely not. Poor thing. It has to deal with living outside, and that it is what it is. But we've got a lot going on here. We have cell damage because of age right here. Okay, so, you know, Phragmipedium leaves, old growth. We discussed that. Yes, they are. They are, divine. I love looking at them. I don't have one though. So we talked about, you know, being a slipper orchid, old leaves, they will be droopy, and then they will also go yellow and fall off. So we can say that this is cell collapse because it is old. However, we've got cell collapse. I do have a close-up, so forgive me. I did do a close-up because we're going to show this. Sorry. We do have cell collapse on a new growth as well, which new leaf, which is unfortunate because, you know, eventually I would like my Garin Weaver to look a little bit more presentable. It's not going to happen because this orchid has to live outside. It's just the way it is. Okay, so you can see that there are several leaves here all around. Beautiful new leaf coming here. However, there is a leaf in here that is also new, already starting cell collapse. Of course, it's out of focus, but you can see the black spots or the brown spots starting, and eventually they'll end up like this. This is cold damage, all right? When you see something like this and it's on a new leaf, take into consideration it is cold damage. It looks very, very similar to the Panarica we saw earlier, but it is completely different. And even though a Phragmipedium can take a lot more cold, let's just say, in comparison to other orchids before they show this, the fact that it is on a new leaf is a sign it is cold damage. We have similar things right here. In this case, here we have a combination of a little bit of pest and mechanical damage of little pests gnawing away at the leaf and leaving that kind of a damage. But important when it comes to new growth that we protect our new growth, and we don't, you know, if we can remove the orchid from the threat, do so. I can't. So eventually this beautiful shiny new leaf here will have spotting on it. And she hasn't bloomed for me except for that one time after I messed with her roots when there was an ant infestation. So maybe I'm going to have to mess with her roots again at some point. If I get really bored, it would be a good time to do it now. From the cold, yes. That is from the cold, Asin. Now, she's up against the hedge. She shouldn't. She should not be cold. But she is. So there's something happening. I can't bring her inside, and it is what it is. She should be able to tolerate 57 degrees Celsius, as far as I'm concerned, but she doesn't. Because light bulb moment as I'm talking out loud, because leca and self-water, leca semi-hydro, evaporative cooling. The roots are colder than she might like. Ding ding! I keep telling myself that about the Laelia purpuratas. I never thought about that with the Garin Weaver. That could be the issue. The roots are too cold, even though they love cold roots, but not that cold. Cold is always relative. There has been bug damage. Yes, Sandy, the bug damage is right here as well. When this orchid also had an ant infestation, you know, all the acid around the ants and everything as they climb up and down. Ants in numbers can cause severe damage on leaves. You know, they leave little bits of acid around as they communicate with each other. All of that causes cell damage. Okay, yeah, right, okay. Shoes are not for you. I hear you. I hear you. Okay, so let me just check if I have anything more of interest to show you. Maybe we'll take a look at this, and then I'm gonna, while we take a look at this, so we don't have dead air while I wait to see the answers to my question. While we look at this picture, already answer if you want me to continue to the next chapter, or if we stop it here. And if anybody has anything to contribute, questions, answers, etc., a little bit of closing down of the stream, let me know, because we've been going 2 hours. Just want to make sure if we do a part 2 mañana, when in Spain. Right, spotting on leaves here. I can also show you my Colmenara Masai Red. She's a classic example of way too many parents in here, too much going on. So I will always have issues with black spots. Usually they will appear on older leaves. The newer leaves always look nice and shiny until eventually they start to show little spots, and that's fine. I can live with that. Leaf tip dieback is another chapter. I might as well address the subject right here. I'm not trying to rush it. If we get to that chapter, perfect, I will elaborate. Leaf tip dieback, lack of humidity in case of this orchid because of the circumstances she has to live in. I can't bring her inside in the summer because she needs the light to grow well. So there's the conundrum. I have space inside to bring her in, but I won't have light because of the angle of the sun being far too high. Now, I'm not trying to elaborate too much on my circumstances as to why things are going wrong and what I can and cannot change. What I'm trying to achieve in doing so is give you an insight into what could be going wrong in your collection so that you can analyze in your environment, in your condition, if you're having similar situation, whether you need to amplify something or reduce something. And in my case, she would need to come inside so I don't get leaf tip dieback, or not as much. Thankfully, this is an extremely old growth, so very, very old. And I don't mind. The leaves are going to fall anyway, which they would normally do. So it doesn't really matter. Now, what I wanted to show you, was it on this one? Let me see. Yellowing of the leaves. Let me just double check. Can I zoom in on this? Because she has the same signs of cell break, where you would say, oh, virus, but we're combining symptoms. Maybe you can just barely make it out over here. The same with what I just showed you on the Oncidium sweet sugar. There's a bit of cell break, and that can be a lot of things. We discussed nutrient deficiency on the area. In this case, it is not nutrient deficiency. In this case, it's just the makeup of the orchid. Oncidium alliances, too much going on in her gene pool. The bulbs are, I'm happy to see that, Anna, really pleased to see that, and I love the bulbs on this orchid. Is that true growing in cushy culture? Masai Red, that is Masai Red. I'm not understanding the cushy culture question, Roby. Is that true growing in cushy culture? I'm not understanding that. If you would like to clarify, I'm not familiar with what you're saying there. But what I wanted to show you here, just as a side note, she's got 5 spikes. Happy days. She used to get 7 once. I got 8 out of her. So we're going from 7 to 6 to 5. That is not good progression. The pseudobulbs here are the size of small mangoes, amazing. And they have progressed to sticking to small mangoes. But now I'm getting, a smaller peach, not an apricot. But I'm going to be watching this phenomenon here because 5 spikes, smaller pseudobulbs, we now have to consider a few factors here. Clearly the orchid is doing fine despite the fact she looks ratty. Cushy, homegrown, plenty. Let me see, Roby. Cushy, homegrown, plenty of light and good. Yes, she's right now she's not cushy. Right now she's like going, I hate you, but I bloom for you anyway, because it's too cold for her outside. So let me see Asen's comment. You talk about the same virus we used to create Phalaenopsis and Cymbidium blooms. Yep, that one. Exactly. That's the one. No, she's not cushy. She is not. In the summer, she's very cushy and very stressed throughout July, August, and then she gets cushy again. And then now in the winter for 4 months, she absolutely hates it. So 6 months, great. 6 months, boo, doesn't like it. But when we see certain symptoms coming together, whether it is anything we've discussed tonight about, some things that can go wrong with orchids, is to watch the progress. Now, you can reach a certain size limitation of a pseudobulb, and I think, a good sized mango is a great size pseudobulb. But as you see a decline, then you need to analyze a few things. Never mind spotty leaves. You need to assess why things are not going or progressing. Why am I not getting 7 spikes all the time? I'm not going to say 8. That's just silly. 1 year I had 3 spikes from one pseudobulb. That's not normal. So I'm not even going to factor in any abnormalities. But this pseudobulb, I will be watching it. If it even plumps up anymore, I doubt it. Normally once they're done, once they've formed their spikes, they're done. This is happening because this orchid needs to be repotted. Okay? This orchid, smaller pseudobulbs, even though everything is going great and fine in the pot, when something like this happens and 2 factors come together, there is a need for repot, even though there's plenty of space in the pot for the orchid to throw out another new growth without me having to intervene. And then the calculated decision has to be made. Yeah, no, I'm fine. I'm good with that. I don't want to do it. I don't want to repot. So then take into consideration now this will be the size of the pseudobulbs moving forward until the repot is taken care of. So the other option is to throw in more fertilizer. So the fertilizer level would be something you can also tweak and adjust. Just make sure that you don't accumulate any salts. That has always been my sort of thing. I would rather have a smaller growth. The orchid blooms, but salt accumulation is very, very difficult to get rid of. Okay? So that's my calculation right here. Now, the time to repot this orchid would be right now because she is growing roots like it's just insane. Absolutely madness. So, 6 weeks ago, maybe for the calendar of 2023, I can put an alert in my phone to repot my Colmenar Masai Red in end of October, because then the new roots have not started yet, but they are about to. And then I don't have to worry about how radical I am and how much damage I do, etc. So just a little side note, when you come to some kind of, things that don't make sense, look at your orchid, look at its history, how long have you had it, and then question whether, it does need a repot. Again, we can get a little bit too complacent when it comes to growing in inorganic media because, hey, our media doesn't break down. But complacency, as I always say, is the biggest enemy of any orchid grower, at least in my case. All right. How are we doing? Let me see. Let me move on to the next chapter. I do believe I've pretty much covered things through here. Oh, well, if because of Michael McCarthy, he's not here today, I guess, but if he were to watch on replay, hi, Michael. Just a little zygo for your pleasure. Also gets black spots. No matter what you do, whether you've got everything balanced out correctly, there is a chance that an older growth, and this is the case in this case, we have black spots on the underside of the leaves on an older growth, It can happen. It's no biggie. There is nothing wrong with it. It's not a pest. It's just the characteristics that can absolutely take place, and the top of the leaf looks beautiful and the way it is supposed to. Right. Next chapter would be leaf tip dieback. We briefly discussed that. Let me see if I can bring that up again because we have some more examples. Are you going to do this for me? Are you going to do this for me? Thank you. Just because I've got 2 in this folder. My computer's going, yeah, I'll do it too. Yeah. You see, the thing is that environmental change and zygos, they don't really go hand in hand. And that can also mean temperature change within the grow space. You can throw as much air movement on a zygo. If you don't have enough humidity, then it's going to look like that because it's getting a little bit too dry, Michelle. And then you throw enough air movement, then you have more humidity and you have enough airflow. But because of the humidity, it's going to show some spotting. La-dee-da-dee-da with the zygos. So as long as they grow nicely, as long as they are consistent, as long as they bloom, their roots are important. The rest is just, yeah, you know, you need a special place for zygos. And not everybody has them. Mine live outside. Deal with it. Can I please have my picture back? Thank you. All right, I thought you were looking at this picture. I'm sorry, I didn't share the screen. Oh, dearie me. There we go. Okay, so we're back to area hyacinthoides because of leaf tip dieback, which is something that can happen quite often. And I thought this was a great example because I've got 2 things going on that can show lack of humidity. One is leaf tip dieback on an older growth because of lack of humidity, and also black spotting on a leaf because it's an older growth and lack of humidity. So we briefly addressed, you know, the green differentials between the leaves. Now, this is leaf tip dieback because of lack of humidity. Leaf tip dieback also happens because of too much fertilizer. All right, then that is when you have to dial down. Too much fertilizer is relative. As I mentioned earlier, I hardly fertilize this orchid at certain points in time, simply because of, you know, too cold around the roots, etc. So this is not an issue of too much fertilizer. My Phragmipedium Garenweeva had leaf tip dieback because of too much fertilizer, because I thought I was in a warmer climate and it would grow faster. Big mistake. Do not, you know, at that point, your leaf tips will look nasty for as long as the leaf is on the orchid. But then at least you know, it's a visual reminder, do not give this orchid too much fertilizer, because that is one of the many, many reasons for leaf tip dieback, as mentioned earlier as well with my Didieri. So this, though, is lack of humidity, which is also, you know, a drying out of the cells, especially on fine leaves. When the leaves structure is almost like an oncidium, humidity is pretty important. So there's that example. Now, also, it can happen on an older leaf simply because of the fact it's been around a lot and had to endure so much more stress. And that's where the first leaf tip dieback will happen, if you're lucky. Leaf tip dieback on who are you? Prostechia lancifolia. What are you doing? Come on. These are new growths. And I've got leaf tip dieback. The reason they're new growths is because the pseudobulbs haven't completely formed yet. You can see that they're a little bit smaller than the ones next door. So even though I take the sheaths off because they come off so beautifully and nicely and without sticking to the bulb, and then I see this, you know, angel sounds. Sorry, my soprano is failing me today. But yeah, new growth, what are you doing? This should not be happening. This orchid normally only gets leaf tip dieback in the summer when there's not enough humidity. So you can get leaf tip dieback because of cold, okay? Keep that in mind. Cold airflow, anything too cold, not a cold draft, but consistent cold temperatures over an extended period of time, which could be Like, as an example, leaving an orchid that is a warm to hot grower outside when the temperatures drop to 57 degrees Fahrenheit, 12 degrees Celsius. Yes, I did that. Okay, that's the extended period of time I'm talking about. 30 minutes, you might get away with it. Speaking of that, hello, I still remember you, Ancelia africana. I promise I'm going to bring you in once I finish the stream. So there you go. Be careful with your temperatures if you're in certain circumstances, that you monitor what is going on. New growths should not normally show any signs of leaf tip dieback. If anything, new growth can only show leaf tip dieback for lack of humidity or over fertilizing, okay? Not the cold. That is not sunburn. That is not sunburn, unfortunately. No, I wish, Sandy, I wish. This is cold damage. I'm so mad at myself, especially with the new growths, tender leaves. Come on, woman, what is wrong with you? Oh, talking to myself here, talking to myself. So over-fertilizing, lack of humidity, and cold damage. Cold temperatures, leaf tip dieback. Okay, those are the three main factors. All right, now I have, let me see, I have a pathetic little example because I don't have much of this, but I'm going to show it to you anyway. We're going to talk about the accordion, the pleated leaves, okay? This is my pleated leaf. I have one. I'm proud of myself. But I was like, what? I'm going to have to describe this. Nope, I've got myself some pleats here. Yeah, it's possible. The thing is that Fernanda Nacimiento, orchids and succulents, I have to say, I have to bring the puff adder inside, the one that you have as well, the one that we have in common. I had to bring that in as well, but it only showed symptoms after the one that I've had all these years that has finally started to grow really, really well. That one was the first to show me, lady, what are you doing? Yeah, because I always brought the Ancelias inside, but now that they're growing well and established, I'm like, okay, let me show what you got. So they all stayed outside. So my oldest, my OG Ancelia is the most vulnerable. Now the one that we have in common is showing, so I'm bringing that one in as well. The other two are still looking good for now, but I am going to push them. I want to know. Your Ancelias, Patricia, what are we going to do about that? How are we going to get your Ancelias to get more light? Man, I'm going to keep my fingers crossed that that is not true and that by spring 2023, you are, or maybe even earlier, you're going to see spikes. Because it sounds to me like you're doing everything right. And I'm just hoping it's a thing of immaturity and when it matures. But if not, we're going to have to probably give it its own little sunbed or something. One of them things. And blast it. Even during the summer. Huh. Yours is still outside. Your temperatures are... Yeah, but you got it protected, right? You've got yours protected, Fernanda, in your... There by the pool, that little pool house section where you have your outside orchids, right? So maybe it's not getting the stress of the cold because it doesn't have to deal with a breeze, a wind, a chill. It's cold, but it's steady cold. You see, mine are outside and they're kind of exposed, for lack of a better term. So yeah, my guess. So accordion leaves, how come, why? Also very common in Miltonias, Miltoniopsis and things like that. Well, normally the first thing we say, we go to, there's no roots in the pot. And in this case, you'd be right. This is happening on a growth that while it was growing, there were no roots in the pot. I'm not saying that right now we have roots in my twinkle, but you can see that the rest of the leaf is growing fine. So somewhere, something improved for it to stop with that pleated effect. All right, so I think maybe, Fernanda, that could be a good consideration. Yep, exactly. Mine aren't. There's no, yeah. Anyway, let me do the pushing and you do the babying, okay? We'll do it like that. I'll tell you when the limit comes. Right now, I'm bringing mine in after several nights of being at 12. I had one night with 10. So after that night, I brought it in because I could see similar signs. Michelle Fucciarino says, this may be nothing is ridiculous. Stop. Okay, I'm going to have to update my channel guidelines here. There is no such thing as stupid questions or ridiculous questions. Let me see. Let me just check this out. We're going to pause the pleating. This may be no. It's how do you tell is mature enough to bloom? No. Asen, yes, please write me that email so that we can make a plan. Because if we're going to grill, roast, and debunk, we're going to do it right. You know, we're going to do it the efficient German way, with a few laughs, and then I hope I don't get a strike. Okay. And when we get it up there, you can please share the link in your channel so that we get as many people in. And if we have to speak German in some parts, we will do that too. Okay, thank you for being here, Asen. I appreciate it. It's good to see you. All right, so an orchid is mature enough. You will know by when. What did they tell you when you bought it? Well, that's just cheating, Fernanda. We're going to do it right. Yes, we are. That is just cheating. How is that possible? Why am I freezing my cojones off here? And bis bald, Asen, bis bald. Danke. And seriously, yeah, no, that doesn't count. My orchids were fine at 15 degrees. All of them. Sorry, Fernanda. I gotta make nice with my little guinea pig. Tschüss, Anna. Tschüss. Herz auf, Hand aufs Herz. Tschüss. Okay. Of course, they're going to be, they're going to say things just to sell the orchid at a higher price, and that is naughty, and I hate it when they do that. So what I'm going to suggest is, if you're not sure, you can send me a picture and I can somewhat digest it. Secondly, if you want to type it in right here, right now, let me know what species it is or what orchid it is, and I'll try and zero in on what is going on. Thirdly, if you don't want to do anything like that, I'm going to tell you this. 1 year, the first year of acclimatization doesn't count whether you've got a blooming size or not. Depending on the species, the majorities won't bloom in your first year. If you've got a hybrid with all the vigor bred into it, it will bloom. Happy days. So 1 year of no acclimating, that's your first year. Don't expect it to bloom. Second year, the first growth that comes out after the one should be the same size as the previous one if it is a near blooming size orchid. If it is a seedling, the first growth you grow in your care should at least be double the size based on a seedling. Near blooming size should be a tad bigger than the previous bulb that it came with. If it is a blooming size orchid, then the new growth, according to your care, will either be bigger because you're actually fertilizing it correctly, what you'd never got in the nursery, that will bloom, or it'll be a little bit smaller. Then you need to adjust your fertilizer levels so that it grows at least the next growth according to the size of the growth that you received the orchid with. Now, it can take, depending on the orchid, it can take 2 years for an orchid to bloom. While when you have it in your collection, that includes near blooming size and blooming size. 2 years. So Michelle says Cattleya schilleriana has 3+ years, puts out a couple new growths each year. All right. So 3+ years couple of growths each year. That means it has several leaves and it's mounted. Okay, so my next questions would be, are the growths the same size that it came with, smaller, or what are the color of the leaves of your Schilleriana? Is it getting enough water? A Schilleriana doesn't necessarily need fertilizer to bloom, but it needs a lot of water while in active growth in order to have the energy to then also put out a sheath to bloom. Okay, so if you've got your Schilleriana, and I'm going to guess here, as a seedling, just growing out of its seedling stage with its first new growth when you got it, you've got it 3 years, that means 5 years, and then depending on how much water it gets while it's on a mount for it to be able to push anything energy-wise for it to bloom. Now I need to wait your answer. All about the same sign, reddish leaves, water daily. All right, so sounds to me you don't have a little itty-bitty one that is growing to size. Reddish leaves, sounds like everything's fine. You water daily. You might need to up the fertilizer level. You may need to up the fertilizer level there. That would be my guess. Because a Schilleriana, even though they're small and stout, they are hungry, especially calcium-wise. They always, ooh. I mean, as long as mine is alive, I just don't want it to die. I'm happy it's alive. And I know that it hates the leca and self-watering, but I'm going to keep it there. It has to be close by the sounds of it, but I would up the fertilizer level a little bit more. And then if that is a little bit concerning, when you have your fertilizer day, make sure that afterwards, I don't know if you water, if you do it by soaking the mount or if you're misting it, spraying it, I don't know. But if you're a little concerned about testing going up in the fertilizer level, Michelle, make sure that you just check what's going on by maybe 30 minutes or 40 minutes later, just rinsing off the mount with plain water. Because the last thing you want to do is, burn the roots, clearly. So you may need to fiddle with it there. 200, okay. Yeah, that's about what I give mine. And mine hasn't bloomed yet, but mine's been through hell and back because I want it in leca and self-watering. So I'm giving it some grace because I'm not getting the same size growth that it came with. I would go to 250. I know that doesn't sound like much. If I say 300, I would really, really ask you to please rinse your mount on the same day of fertilizing, just to see how much it can absorb without going, without any residue. Okay. Right, so pleats, not only pretty in skirt, no, pleats, pretty in skirts, not on leaves. So this is obviously, okay, Michelle, keep me updated, okay? Let me know. Yeah, you're very welcome. It's my pleasure. I'm glad that you're here asking. This is what it's all about. So, okay, no roots, but then of course you can see the progression of the leaf as such after the pleating effect. It's all beautiful because if something was still horribly wrong with this little growth here, the pleating effect would continue all the way down the leaf. Now, pleating is so far, there's nothing wrong with the orchid's health per se if the root problem has been addressed, because pleating only happens because there's not enough hydration. Pleating very, very rarely happens because of lack of humidity, right? Pleating can happen because the growth is tucked in a bract that is holding it in place. The bract is drying out, and with that, it can't release. Low humidity is the result of a bract not being able to release a new growth, a leaf, etc. So not so much that there's something wrong with the orchid, it is the environment. These orchids that grow very, very tough bracts to protect their new growths, there's a reason for that, because the environment usually is pretty harsh and the tender cells need to be protected. High humidity is there in their environment to loosen and soften up the bracts, and with that, a leaf can be released. So if your orchid is growing massive on the root front and doing super well, why are your leaves pleating? That is because your humidity is too low, and in the formation, as they start to grow, their new growths, their new leaves, they will pleat. Now you can release them by moving off the bract and helping them release. Be super, super careful though, because sometimes these kinds of orchids, especially the Miltonias, will also produce a spike at the same time. But if you see pleating on your leaves, know that a trapped spike is the next problem you might incur. And you might think, my plant, my orchid isn't blooming. My orchid never blooms. Well, it's probably because if your leaves have the tendency to have this pleating effect, it is possible that your spikes never made it out of those bracts either. So if you have these kinds of orchids, Miltonia, Miltoniopsis, up the humidity, especially if you've got a great root system and if you're watering accordingly, because they are thirsty. When they have a great root system, they are thirsty. Okay, let me check the comments here. There have been a couple of orchids you've moved actually to less optimum culture. I think it was just the move that encouraged them to bloom. Yes, that happens as well. So happy to hear that. Nothing more nicer than to see a Bangkok sunset in bloom, and I am jealous because I can't grow that one here. And I never ever bought it, thankfully. Otherwise it would have been a goner, and it's one beautiful orchid. Love it. Pleating happened to the new growth on my Encyclia garciana, and that is a lack of water and humidity. Encyclia garciana, they are the devil. So yes, they are in a basket pushing new growths and over the rim. Exactly. If the new roots on an Encyclia garciana, sorry, mine is the albiform, don't hit media straight away and start doing their job, it is, I have mine in Akadama in semi-hydro. Akadama is the sponge water retention media that is like rock wool. If there were a comparison, once Akadama is wet, it is wet. There is no damp. It is wet all the time. And for the first year when I switched my Encyclia into Akadama and semi-hydro, I got rid of that pleating effect. And hello and behold, because it is a climber to a degree, grows everywhere like in beast mode, the new growths of this season are a little bit higher and the roots aren't hitting the media straight away. And I've got a pleating effect again. I don't know if I even want to divide this orchid and give it away, because not all of it, but parts of it away. It was part of the plan, get it established, then, divide it and send off to others. But because it's a headache. It's a pretty headache. And that's also a classic example, Michelle, and I should have actually taken pictures of my Garciana. I didn't even think of that as I was just talking about it, because I've got pleating on some of the leaves there too. And that is a classic example for a trapped flower spike as well. Now, be super careful. Excuse me. Be super careful when removing anything trying to release a trapped flower spike, because it will snap 90% of the time. Yeah. Flower spikes on these orchids that get pleated leaves are super, super tender. Insanely tender. They are delicious. I love the fragrance of my Garciana alba. And I have to tell you that I am so looking forward to the next blooming, because it just went bonkers and I can see buds coming everywhere. But yeah, I was messing around because of a bit of a mealy bug, and I popped a bud off. I'm like, what? I just wanted to lift it up a little bit and get that mealy bug out, and poof, I had it in my hand. I'm like, okay, whatever, can't win. So yeah, humidity is one of the biggest factors when it comes to pleating and avoiding it, and avoiding trapped flower spikes as well. So I have 3 more chapters to go. Oh, Roby, if you're okay with the imperfections, I mean, I would buy a Garciana again all day, every day. It becomes a specimen-sized orchid in next to no years, to say. Meanwhile, mine is 4, but I got my Garciana alba when she was an itty-bitty 3-bulb with a new growth. And that little new growth bloomed, surprisingly. And, well, it's like having a Maxillaria variabilis. If you think cousin it, he was too small for his 20 centimeter pot. Look at him now. It didn't take 2 years to get that to specimen, and the Garciana is exactly the same. It's a rewarding orchid. I love it. Yeah, I would get it. Not you know what? This orchid doesn't need an encouragement to grow in 4 directions of growth all at once. It's just insane. I love it. Exactly. I know, and it is nice to have an orchid like that. It is absolutely delicious. I akin the fragrance. This is how I experience the fragrance of my Garciana alba. For me, it's like the fanciest talcum powder that you can buy at one of the very, very expensive perfume shops that a very rich aging lady would wear as part of her, not as perfume, but you know, back in the days they put powder in people's hair to make the hairdo last longer, not hairspray. That's what I love the fragrance. Yes, get one. Yeah, if you can, get it. So rewarding. Absolutely. So, shall we continue? Because, hang on a second, got to mute. Alrighty, sorry about that. Gyrac antelope, oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. That is so frustrating. I'm sorry, Patricia. Okay, we got it. Moving on, let's go. Our next chapter is pests. Now, pests is quite a variety of things. So what I'm going to show, there could have been 15 chapters for all of this, but I conglomerated quite a few things into one. But I have seen a lot of questions sometimes in my videos, and if anybody were to ever check this live stream, then they will see this as well. And if not, then Hakuna Matata. All right, let's share this. Smiles all around. Lady Chatterley is back in the viewfinder. Phalaenopsis corner Serbi variety Chateladay. Now, big smile, but boo-hoo. This was last season. She loves the mealybugs. Will love it because she has all the attributes that mealybugs enjoy. So many people think that, you see, in another example I will show you that this has very striking similarity to Boisduval scale, which is also fuzzy and white. But what I wanted to emphasize in this live stream is the difference of being able to identify the two of them. So these are mealybugs and they're babies, okay? When we get to the Boisduval, I hope that I'll find the picture. This folder is also very, very big. It won't upload. I'll find the picture and we'll do the next one, the Boisduval. The difference being, mealybugs in their baby stages, we can deal with them. Unfortunately, I cannot see them with my naked eye anymore. When I take a photograph, okay, there's more little ones here that had me suspicious. That's why I took the picture, because you can see them. They're kind of like even all the way over here. There's a few up there. So this was just sort of a confirmation. And then I knew, because I can't see it with my naked eye, I knew where to target and go and, you know, brush them off. I did not use garlic alcohol on blooms because I don't want the alcohol to kill the blooms, but still. So mealybugs will normally be individuals when they're this small. So don't panic when you see this on any of your orchids, especially on the blooms. Boisduval scale. So remember, mealybugs as babies, they're small and they scatter around because they're quite agile. They move around quite quickly. All right. So they'll be in little groups of 1 or There's no such a thing as a group of one. That's me, myself, and I. That already makes 3. They'll be in groups of 2s or 3s like that. Hey, Evie Barcode, I am happy to see you. I need you to email me, please, because I was hoping that you would probably show up and I could plan ahead with regards to the pictures. So you need to email me. We need to make a date, and we want to see those carnivorous plants of yours, okay? So, right, so here we are. Again, groups of 2 to 3. Very, very small. These are baby mealybugs, easy to deal with. Hakuna Matata, all right? I'm going to now pull up a picture of Boisduval scale so that you see the difference. And que si, matata mucho. So that's 2 languages right there, as in this matters a lot. I don't want to gross you out, okay? It's gross, all right? So, Boisduval scale. Now, you see how clustered up they are? All right, this is the huge, huge difference. All right, big, big difference when you see fuzzy white things that are little speckled, as we saw on the bloom of the chatelaine, okay? Big difference. Now you're seeing a massive cluster, also nice, white and fuzzy, all pretty. And I'm not even going to address what we're seeing here. That's obvious, okay? But this little cluster right here can easily be mistaken, if you don't know what you're looking at, as mealybugs. The danger of confusing the two is that this stuff is deadly if not treated and treated and treated and treated. Mealybug, okay, we're going to have a few mealybugs on a bloom. It's not going to kill the orchid straight away. By the time a mealybug is an adult, we're done. You know what I mean? We get rid of them. If this is mistaken for mealybugs, the orchid can be in trouble very, very quickly. Now, how come it came to this? Well, Boisduval scale has a big thing that the front of the orchid, the front of the leaf, does not show any kind of damage until you take a closer look. Yes, but I can't show them today, Evie, because I've already been going 2.5 hours, all right? We need to make a specific date, okay? So I hope you got my email, because I emailed you right after the last live, and I hope you got that, because I really wanted to, narrow it down with you. Okay, so the front of the leaves don't always show that there's a problem in the back. And I'm scrutinizing my Rapiculus lalius on the daily, and you would think it should never come to this. Now, yes, they how do you say, they reproduce very, very quickly, and once an adult explodes and all the babies come out, this can be a thing of 2 days, 3 days. It doesn't matter. It's not an excuse. This is super, super dangerous, okay? Please do not be put off by seeing little fluffy things if they come up in this quantity. And I can tell you this is probably a 3-day infestation after I missed seeing the adults, okay? So that was the big part for me to bring this up when it came to pests, because the majority of us know about the pests and how to deal with them, but probably the majority of us don't know how to differentiate between a harmless little fluffy baby mealybug, if you can't even see it with your visual eye, as opposed to seeing, now this is extremely increased, as opposed to seeing something that is fluffy and white and comes in a massive cluster like this. Mealybugs in baby form will never cluster like this, okay? This is dangerous. Now, the orchid is fine. I got rid of it, garlic alcohol, and then every 3rd, 4th day, looking under the leaves, checking in between the pseudobulbs, really being pedantic about this stuff. This is honestly, I would say, yeah. If you can't take care of this, or if you can't get a hold of this on an orchid, it will take the orchid out. There is no 2 ways about it. Meanwhile, this orchid is probably so annoyed with me that she won't bloom. This is the Laelia flavasolina. But, so this is the biggest thing. Arlene, hello, it's good to see you. No worries, no worries. You're very welcome. There's always the replay. I appreciate that you're here. It's good to see you. Maybe if I had gotten off and stopped after 5 chapters, we wouldn't have gotten this far. And you, oh, nice to see you. I hope you're doing well. So yeah, This is easily taken care of, okay? But it has to be taken care of, and then it has to be monitored. And guess who is now looking behind every single leaf on their Rapiculus Lalius? That would be me, all right? So maybe I need to make a live bite out of this one as well, because Boisduval scale in baby form has the similar appearance of mealybugs, and we can walk away and feel safe that, oh, it's a mealybug, I'll deal with it when I get around to it. No, if you can, drop everything, take the orchid out, look at every single orchid in the vicinity, check everything. I mean, you don't have to unpot it. We don't need to go to those extremes. But from then on in, monitor, 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 okay? Let me see if this is going to take you back to an image that is baby mealybugs, okay? Just so that you, with another example, all right? This looks like what we saw earlier, which was the Boisduval scale. Any other scale is pretty much easy and obvious to see because they're yucky looking even when they're small. They glisten, they drop some kind of a honeydew. It's disgusting. But this is why the emphasis I'm going to make with this folder, without going into too much, you know. This looks nice and fuzzy, but this is baby mealybugs, okay? Now, you might say they're all grouped together, but they're really not. It's just the angle of the image as such. And this is my Garciana alba. Coincidentally. She's a mealybug magnet, but they're easily dealt with, okay? But again, for me, if it's white and fuzzy, I'm dealing with it. Thankfully, for the time being, I have time. If I miss white and fuzzy and it's a Boisduval scale, then I am in trouble. If it's white and fuzzy, it's a mealybug. I'm not so much in trouble, but why would I want to risk it? Now, I'm going to show another image because earlier in the live stream, we also had the subject of spots on leaves, and this is about pests, this chapter here. And here we are with also very clear symptoms of thrips. So many, many years ago, actually, when I started my channel, I took a leaf of, this is my Dendrobium nafix Alex Poli, one of the older leaves. I took a leaf from this orchid to my garden center and said, what is going on? What pest is this? And they sold me on the idea that it was moth larvae. And moth larvae, they hatch at night and they do all the funny things at night. And then one day you wake up and your leaf looks like this. Needless, to my knowledge, this is thrips. And I'm a bit annoyed that my garden center couldn't figure that out. But thanks to the YouTube channel, this year, people figured it out because I had the same symptoms on another orchid, several as a matter of fact. And some of them turned out to be mites, and some of the symptoms turned out to be a combination of thrips and mites, because yes, when they come in twos, not necessarily, but with me, that's what happened. And neither of them had I actually registered before. So thrips, little suckers, because that is what they are. And sometimes you will see black residue. I call it poop, but it's not. Maybe it's poop, but if thrips are so tiny, how am I able to see their poop? It makes no sense. But let me show you, excuse me, let me show you another example, because the black is the confirmation. Oh, where are you? Where are you? I know I put you in this folder because I wanted to do an update. Unfortunately, Anna has gone because she was asking about this. So there we go. All right. Unfortunately, the one on the right is just a stem, and I'm kind of hoping maybe something will grow out of it. The roots are still fine. I've still got it. But what I want to, the one on the left, the leaf in the crown here has now grown clean. The damage of the thrips in the crown, thankfully, did not take the orchid out. And then the second leaf is now growing clean. So fingers crossed. You have to be on top of thrips. I use garlic alcohol, and I started to use insecticidal soap again, much to my disdain. I was happy garlic alcohol was doing it, but I don't mess around when it comes to thrips or mites, because I have lost orchids this year because of those two. And yes, I had a double whammy, but still, garlic alcohol alone won't take care of it. It is one of the treatments, and then you alternate with insecticidal soap or some other kind of pesticide. Now, the damage here is a big problem. That's why this little one didn't make it, even though we see a new leaf was starting to grow, because they suck all the juices out of the cells and then the leaves dry off. And this is where I'm showing you the black spots right here. These guys right there. And I can only say, well, to me that looks like thrips poop. But it doesn't come off. You can't wipe it off. So I don't know what they put into the cells. It just doesn't come off. However, with small orchids like this, these miniatures, and when you get it to this stage, photosynthesis is interrupted. There is no coming back from it. And this one, unfortunately, didn't have enough foliage. These two guys died off pretty quickly. And little one just, yeah. Anyway, I don't know if it's going to make it. I'm not throwing it away. But we had more surface area on the foliage around this one. So that's the only reason I'm actually saying this one survived. Oh, hey, Anna, I'm glad to see you. Okay, okay, you went to the toilet eye. All right, thank you for being here. So when it came to thrips, I thought, I'm not messing about. I need 2 different variables of treatments, and it is not on a weekly to 10-day schedule. It is every 3 days with these buggers, because yes, they are small, they are fast, and they reproduce like rabbits. So there's no joking around with these guys either. I jumped the hurdle, got myself some insecticidal soap. I didn't make it myself, because if I'm going to go down that road, I'm going to buy it from a shop where I hope that all the combinations, the proportions are exactly what I need at that point in time. When it comes to situations like this, experimenting is not on the table. And the insecticidal soap that I have, again, was doing so well before I discovered garlic alcohol. Excuse me while I have a drink of water. The frog really wants to do a number on my voice. Okay, Roby, time of year and temps play in as well, right? Yes. Well, you see, the ability to recover is extremely important. And thankfully, the miniature orchids have the benefit they can fit anywhere. I can give them light. I can give them enough light because they fit into a little squeezy spot where a bigger pot has, rounded off the edges and there is no space for anything else, but it has a lot of light. It is super important at that point in time without adding to the stress of the orchid. You don't want to burn whatever green you've got left, but they need a lot of light. And thankfully, with the light where I can put them, when they sit in their little water bath there, that water is nice and warm. Not hot, not toasty, don't want to do that, but it's not cold water. So there's no shock to their system when they get watered, okay? So it is extremely important, and I'm extremely lucky that these two being miniatures, let's just say I've got one and a stem of one left. Being miniatures, it's lucky for me that I can give them what they need. If, like with my Didieri, the temperatures and where it was sat, etc., if that were the case with these two, they probably wouldn't make it either. But fingers crossed, it's looking good so far. Anyway, thrips is nothing to mess about with. Neither are spider mites. And one thing I was going to say, I just wanted to bring up another image. That's something I addressed earlier. I touched upon it briefly. Let me see. I know I put it here. Okay. For the squeamish, I apologize, but this is reality. When an orchid is protected by any kind of insecticide, whatever it is, preventative measure you use, you usually focus on the structures. You usually focus on the base, the rhizome, the eyes, the growth points, the monopodials, the leaves, etc., blah, blah, blah. Then they will find something that is not protected, and that includes spikes. So this is real. This is a Tolumnia whose structure is super protected, and this is not Boisduval scale. This is something else. I am not a scale expert, except for the fact I hate them. That's the only expert advice that I can put out there, which one this one is, but you can see, okay, I can see that these are little guys. They're not fully developed. The little guys of Boisduval scale are nice and fluffy and fuzzy. These guys are more of a hard shell, but they're young because they still have a little bit of translucent about them. So they're easy to deal with, but I'm not messing around with this because I don't want the plant to get infected. So cut the spike off. When it gets to a point like this, I mean, they blend in with a Tolumnia spike, and this is already zoomed in as per the image. And the only reason I saw these, again, you know, visual is important, and if your eyes start to fail, etc., I'm not going around with a magnifying glass when I check my orchids. Maybe, unfortunately, I may have to start doing that, but I did not see these with the naked eye the way they were camouflaged and being translucent up against a Tolumnia spike. But when I took the image and then zoomed in, I was like, what the HE double hockey sticks? The spike came off. I treated the Tolumnia. I'm not sure the Tolumnia is going to survive, to be honest with you, because obviously these little buggers, there's something happened with the rest of the orchid, and I'm going to have to make sure to check my folder which Tolumnia actually this was, because I'm about to lose 2 or 3 more Tolumnias simply because they were so stressed from a scale infestation that I had earlier in the season, because Dum Dum here wasn't checking them. I was just, complacent. The biggest enemy of any orchid grower. I know I repeat myself, complacency, but here we are. Do not let it come to this if you can help it, and if you cannot help it, cut the spike. I know, right? I'm sorry. Let's get rid of that. So this is not only on Tolumnia spikes, it'll happen on any structure of your orchid. If it is not protected, the buggers will find a way. And I'm not trying to be dismissive about it. It would appear not to be obvious. It would appear to be obvious, but it's not. And I'm going by my mistakes and where I overlook and think, yeah, it's going to be fine. There's no scale. And then boom, they'll find another way. Now, another pest briefly to touch upon is mould. Very, very high humidity will cause this, of course, and lack of airflow, but also most importantly, the onset of mould per se, in general, even if you have high humidity and airflow and everything is fine, is decay in the pot, all right? Now, usually you would see that more in organic media because there's a lot more decay going on, a lot of more bacteria, and there's a lot more humidity, and if there's not enough airflow, blah, 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 blah. So here's what you get a lot of mold. To see it to this extent in a pot that has inorganic media, leca only, that is a problem. That should not be happening. Now, luckily, mold is easy to get rid of because a spritz of hydrogen peroxide 3%, it's gone, and then flush it out nicely, and the whole thing is history, and it never returned. So this happened because I had a couple of weeks of high humidity, surprise, surprise, on a Brassicatlia that had rotting roots in the pot, but I wasn't going to disturb it because this orchid is in dire need of recovery. So the decay, the high humidity, plus the setup, even though it's inorganic, boom, mold. But thankfully, this is not a pest that's a big concern because easily dealt with. If you have organic media and the whole pot, I'm not saying the whole pot being infected or that you could see mold everywhere, but know that mold spores are everywhere in the pot. Just, you can give your organic media, even inorganic media. I didn't do that with this case, and this is a pretty strong outbreak. I didn't soak it, but what you can do is take hydrogen peroxide 3%, soak the entire pot for as long as it takes for the surface to stop fizzing, all right? You want the surface to stop fizzing, take it out, and then really flush it through. Not because the hydrogen peroxide is going to do any damage, but you want to get rid of all the gunk and the spores and everything. I mean, seriously flush that pot through. First, really flush it through, and if you then want to do a double whammy, soak it in fresh water after pouring water as fast through that thing as possible, just to get all the gunk out. It may return in organic media, it may not, but in my case, and I'm not saying that I'm not saying it did not return because of my inorganic media, it just didn't return. So that's that. But if you have organic media and some mold, it's also a way that you can bridge the gap between repotting when the timing is wrong, as opposed to repotting because you've got mold. Just soak that pot and you'll be fine. Make sure to flush though, because you don't want any of that to be sticking around in your pot, even if everything else is going to be fine while you're waiting to repot. You just don't want that. It's nasty stuff. Ugh. Anyway, so needless to say, let's go back to just one more thing out of this thing, just in case I didn't. Where are you? Oh yeah, here you are. Do I have a better one? Oh yeah. Okay, so of course, if the pests can get to the flower spikes, they will also get to the blooms. So yeah, this was my first year when I didn't have my Phalaenopsis flower spikes protected with garlic alcohol. And I was completely oblivious. I was so proud of myself that, hey, I got blooms. I got no scale. I got blooms. And then I takes a closer look and I see all this. Even one has the audacity to be like, boop, right on the nose. I thought that's so rude. But again, if you're not looking closely, I mean, now with a zoomed in camera lens, you see a bump like that, that thing is already mature. This gives me opportunity to show you that the ones on the Tolumnia spike, you know, translucent, little itty bitty, this is an adult, it's ready to pop. Anyway, easily dealt with. If the rest of the orchid is scale free, cut the flower spikes and don't even put them in a vase. But just make sure that, you know, you don't overlook these minor details which could have some serious outcome. Okay. The next chapter I've got is about viruses, and I only have, let's say, two. Brea! Hello! It's good to see you. Nice of you to stop by. Hello, tongue. Right. So I only have one case that I can show you. Now I want to try. Yeah, we'll do that. Let's see how much my computer can upload, as in open in one go without me having to bounce from picture to picture, because that's a bit annoying. I wonder if it's going to do it. Otherwise, I have nothing open. I just want it to open 4 images. There we go. Thank you. Okay, we'll do it in 2s. As you wish, we'll do it in 2s. Okay. We are going to start with this one because pretty. Okay, now in my collection, I believe I have 2 orchids that are virused. Okay, so one of them is a CG Roebling, and it's a recent, let's say a recent diagnosis. I pretty much come to the fact that it is virus because gorgeous bloom, pretty bloom, big bloom, and beautifully fragrant bloom at that. However, in subsequent years, this is what's been happening. This was the first blooming after the extremely stressful winter of 21-22, when I couldn't support the orchids with what they need, i.e. light and heat. Okay, so this was the first blooming, and you can clearly see extremely deformed blooms, that the top sepal isn't even properly functioning, and everything is a little bit, yeah, skew-with. You see the tiny little petals right here, tiny, malformed, and then something of substance wants to come out, but it's like it's all over the place. It makes no sense at all. Now, unfortunately, my computer is not letting me show it as a slideshow per se, so I'm going to have to do it this way again. Now, viruses are very difficult to determine because there are so many symptoms that come into play when it comes to a virus. But I'm showing the blooms because you saw the perfection of the first blooms. For the first 3 years I've had this orchid, she was just reliable, fantastic, and beautiful. But when when an orchid has stress, even if it can live with a virus for many, many years, and I'm sorry that my screen keeps flashing, it's because I'm looking for the next picture as I speak. When there a certain amount of stress comes through, then we have problems. And that is when, if an orchid has a virus that you didn't notice before, goes under a certain amount of stress, then we have issues, and we will see them first off in the form of the blooms, which is extremely disappointing because you think that for years and years and years, and then this. So the reason I can diagnose this as a virus orchid is because this may have been the first time it was doing it after a very, very stressful period. But the next growth that came followed on with the same similar symptoms as the first two blooms that you saw, where I had a pinched bud. It wouldn't come out of the sheath properly, given the circumstances that now we were well into the growing season. Hello, Johanna Grande, it's good to see you. Fernanda's crying, why? I recently got an infestation of scale on my Cattleya. I used garlic, but still haven't been able to get rid of it. I lost several of them. Okay, I'm sorry to hear that. Scale infestation is something that is literally on the daily, especially when it's an infestation, because you think you've dealt with it, and then they're in the back. Then they're in the nooks and crannies down by the media. And if it is, I am so sorry to hear that. Now, oh, that is sad. When I had that scale, they were starting to manifest themselves on my Rapiculus lalius. I can tell you, panic set in, but it is literally every single day an inspection. And if in doubt, paint. If in doubt, get a paintbrush out and paint the little structures, especially in situations that, I don't know if you saw the images from before and that prompted you to comment, but that is what needs to be done. They are horrible. I know they serve their purpose somewhere, but they should. Okay, you do that. Please keep me posted, because I've never lost an orchid to scale. I've lost orchids to other things like fusarium and virus, hello, holla, but not to scale. Ay, I'm so sorry. So the reason I can also diagnose now with certainty that this orchid is virus, because during the growing season, this growth matured, plenty of light, plenty of warmth. There should be no reason why this was a pinched bud within the sheath, exactly the same as it happened 6 months prior. And that was when there was no light and cold temperatures, so I accepted it. Now, it's unfortunate, but I have other symptoms I can show you if I can get the right image out, because I want you to see, and please excuse the bird poop on the maxima leaf next to it. I apologize. The pleasures of outdoor growing. All this happens in your collection, and as you take pictures, it's like, I've got to take the picture now. I can't clean the leaves. So here we go. Another sign of a virus is here. What looks to be a sunburn, but it's not. This is very similar to maybe you think you've burnt. Thank you, Johanna. I appreciate that so much. Patricia, you dumped 2 of your Cattleya because oh, I bet that was hard. I still have my Roebling. I still have her. But I'm not bringing her inside. Oh, that was hard, I bet. I mean, so what you see here is a sunburn. If you saw my videos in the past, maybe you'll recognize this. I didn't pull up the before picture because I didn't want to have issues with my stream dropping frames, bringing too much to the screen. But this has grown. This is bigger. It's actually fusing. If I remember correctly, it was separate. Now it's together. So it not only is it growing, but it is also growing in separate little patches over here. This is not sunburn. I know how I direct my orchids on light and everything like that. This orchid was not positioned facing any kind of sun, and if it were faced another way, another angle of sun or light would have affected any other leaf based on the angle. So, you know, when I singe and burn my orchids like I did my Dowiana, I will tell you, this is not sunburn. This is pretty much now with two symptoms combined after having gone through the conditions not being conducive to a proper blooming. Now we're talking good conditions. No, now we're adding more and more symptoms. And another one is the break of the cells, as we saw in the oncidiums. And okay, I'm not going to pull up another picture just to keep it simple, so I'm not flashing on the screen with you, but we're going to zoom into the purpurata leaf on the left. Now, this is scale, symptoms of a bit of scale having been on that leaf previously, and it leaves a white mark like this. On my CG rolling right next to it, there was no scale on a leaf, and it's showing this. On the CG rolling, this symptoms is another sign that it is affected with a virus, as opposed to my purpurata. I know the blighters that I removed here. So even though they're living next to each other, this is not a sign that I would say the virus has jumped, because one pest bit into my robling, then went to my Ladia purpurata. At least right now, that is what I'm hoping is not the case, because everything else on the orchid is looking okay. Of course, being little shelf mates, it can always happen. It's a risk I am taking. I hope I got it right. So if you see little blotches like this on an orchid, and you combine it with a not good blooming, but everything else in your environment is okay, you add to that brown spotting like over here, and you don't have a sunburn or artificial light burn, you keep adding the symptoms, it's a problem. It's like body language, okay? You can see somebody scratch their nose and say they're lying. Well, no, maybe they've just got an itchy nose. But if you know the baseline of your orchid, and you know its history and habits, let's just say even if you get it in you, these are the things you need to look out for. But in my case, I have a baseline. I know my orchid, I itch my nose in a certain way. If I was lying, I would be doing something else, because I have sort of some history, some background on body language, whether it wouldn't be acceptable in court, but it is certainly another little analysis factor if you're looking into somebody and seeing if they're deceiving you. So, my tells are different, because I know what people are looking for. If I want to tell a lie, I'm certainly not scratching my nose. I hope that makes sense for anybody out there that's looking for a baseline. Know your baseline, look at the symptoms. Clear signs are brown spots, white halo type things, deformed blooms. And that doesn't even mean that your new growth isn't going to grow nicely to size. Okay? So you can still have a great looking new growth. That's not even going to be a symptom of a virus. Okay. Yeah, and you're right, Patricia. Oh, Johanna Grande, let me tell you something. If I was on the YouTube side of the chat, I would highlight your comment. You don't know how much that means to me. 3 words, huge impact, great motivation. Thank you so much. Yes, and I know, Patricia, and I am so loath at this point. And I hope I don't regret it. I really hope I don't regret it. Excuse me. I need some more water. Neat Upright Plant Paradise. Hey, in the house. Hey, happy holidays to you too. Beautiful. Brea Fisher says, I have a Cattleya leaves that look exactly like that. I treat it regular with Physan like you and I have talked about before. The newest leaves are clean so far. Great. Great. I'm happy to hear that. Good. Then maybe it's just another little thing that has nothing to do with a virus, because a virused orchid, unfortunately, is a doomed orchid. And even though conditions can and will improve in the orchid's habitat, even if I gave it more light, etc., I can tell you, once the virus takes hold, it's not as if the orchid will recover in strength so that it can then counteract the virus. Once it's done, it's done. I found the picture while I was yapping away of the CG Roebling leaf with the white halos, so I'm going to show them to you right now. You see that? That is not scale, but there is a similarity to the one I showed you before that is right next to it, the Laelia purpurata, where I know there was scale. So, yeah, I hear you. I hope I don't end up hating myself, Patricia. I really, really hope. Ooh. Anyway, you know, sometimes they say risk reward. I don't know. Anyway, but you see the white spots? They look like the scale bits and pieces, except they're a little bit more predominant right here. This is something that if you haven't had scale on any part of the leaf and this happens, then start to look at other symptoms and see if you can't draw a conclusion, or buy a very, very expensive test kit, which is something I am not going to do, because if I were to pay for a test kit, let me tell you something, I'm going to buy myself a CG Roebling replacement and then some for the price of one test kit. So talking about economy and your priorities, right? Okay, so the final chapter we have arrived at is rotting bulbs. Rotting bulbs, when is it okay? When is it not okay? So let me start with an image so my computer doesn't hate me, because so far we haven't had any audio issues. Can't believe it. So happy. At least I haven't noticed a single comment complaining about audio issues. Not complaining in a bad way. I appreciate it. I want that feedback. I'm saying that there is no audio issues to my understanding. Woohoo. Totally off topic. How long does it take for fire spike to bloom and to develop? 3 months. From start to finish. I know, Freya, right? I know. I shouldn't have said anything. Please, please, please. Exactly 3 months. They go to, let me just make sure that I get my conversion thing out, because if anybody is around that doesn't do imperial, we want to make sure that we get things right. And they grow to, let me see, we're going to centimeters and we're going to go to inches, because they grow to, get to the point, 31 inches, 80 centimeters. Okay, so once you see one, it's freak out time because you're happy, and then start freaking out to make sure that it stays. And keep the ants off them. I didn't show that image when we were talking about pests, because the ants will bring the aphids, and then your fire blooms are history, because they're not exactly very, very sturdy blooms. They look sturdy, but they're extremely delicate to the touch and bruising. You touch the white, it looks brown the next day. Stuff like that. Woohoo! That is awesome. That is absolutely awesome. Sorry, I have to go on mute. Sorry. Mine hasn't started to develop anything, but meanwhile it was repotted, disturbed with, etc. Sorry about that. It was disturbed with, but yeah, majestic. And one year, I broke off a spike because I was moving it through one of those freak storms that I have. They are very delicate. They look tough. They will grow bolt upright. They look gorgeous. They look like they can handle just about anything. But yeah, I moved it, and it cracked a spike just from the angle that I was holding this big pot at, and a wind gust pushed me over, and the spike touched the shelf and snapped. Woohoo! Bananda! That is amazing! That is fantastic. I'm so happy to hear that. Congratulations! Awesomeness! You will have your spikes. Have you, oh, I'm so curious now. How long are they? When did you see them? Blah, 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 blah. Wonderful. Okay. Right. So I wanted to touch upon the subject of rotting pseudobulbs because I find that many people can avoid plenty of issues just by a few simple little things. And here are several of things that I want to show you that maybe in your case can stop it from happening, all in one picture. Rotting pseudobulbs are normal. Maybe rotting is the wrong word to use. Decaying, dying pseudobulbs are normal if they happen in the back of the orchid. Now, I wish my computer would behave because I could now go to the next image and just show you what I mean by comparison. Sorry, we're going to have to do the little bit of skippity-doo-dah. Anyway, so all these pseudobulbs in the back here, perfect. They're going to die. That's awesome. They're on their way out. I've had this orchid for years. These are the pseudobulbs she came with. That's a pretty good lifespan. Everything is fantastic. Now, you can just twist them off. You can cut them off. In this case, this top one, I'm already in the process of twisting them. I'm not surprised you're happy. I'd be happy too. It's fantastic. You panicked the first time that happened to you with the pseudobulbs. Okay, so the top one I can twist off, no problem whatsoever. Now, what you see in my case down here, we have the pseudobulb that's very buried, and the next one next to it is also extremely buried. So you would say, yeah, no wonder they're decaying because they are buried. The rhizome is below the media. The pseudobulbs are below the media, so you would think that is rot. Not in this case. This is old age. And the reason I'm telling you that in this case it's not rot is because my leca on the surface is not wet. Yes, I can imagine the first time you see something like that, it's quite scary, I agree. So you have to be careful because you can get away with burying your rhizome, burying your pseudobulb. Sometimes it's necessary, especially if you have a climber, that you bury the back bulb so that the front bulb is level with the media so that the roots can grow inside, etc., etc. So you can get away with that as long as you keep the back bulbs or any pseudobulbs or any rhizome. Let's just say we're talking now about some podials with a rhizome like a cattleya. You can bury the rhizomes without any issues, no detriment to new growth, as long as the surface of your media is never ever soaking wet continuously. So in my very dry climate, I have a dry top layer and I make it work for me when I can in my favor because I have so many disadvantages because of the dry top layer that drive me bonkers, so that when it works for me in my favor, this is what I do. I do bury my rhizomes, my pseudobulbs a little bit lower because mine will never rot. Okay, now if you have a very humid environment and you're growing in leca, let's just say semi-hydro inorganic media, please make sure that you have enough airflow in order to get away with this, because you will probably not get away with this in semi-hydro using leca or a highly water retentive media in a very humid climate. And I'm not even talking about rain. The surface will not dry out. Your dry top layer will be non-existent. So this would be an issue. Do not do this if you are in an environment of 75% and higher consistently. All right. I would then err on the side of caution, keep the rhizomes, keep the pseudobulbs level with the media. The same if you're growing in organic media. It all depends. If you are in chunky bark and you have a dry surface layer because of your chunky bark, you can get away with this, no problem. If it is a very humid, nice, hot, sticky, perfect paradise greenhouse setting, don't do this, even with chunky bark, okay? So depending on the level of your humidity, this is forgiving or it's dangerous, all right? Now, just in case you see mine in a video or something, always ask away if there are any kind of clarifications that you want. These are old pseudobulbs. They are done, they've done their duty, and eventually they will fade into oblivion because I have no intention of removing these by force. but I'm watching them. Even though I have a dry top layer, I am now in the time of year I have to watch them, because something like this can very, very quickly turn into rot. Because now the tissue is softened, bacteria has access to develop and form, and it can turn into rot. Should that happen based on the circumstances and the weather, then an intervention is required, and it's not going to be pretty, and I may actually be sacrificing this nice pseudobulb over here as well. Okay, so you need to be mindful of your conditions and of the age of the pseudobulbs, and just keep an eye on it, because even though at this point in time there's no threat at all, 24 hours, 48 hours later, this could be a problem and it needs to be dealt with. And then if you have to sacrifice another older pseudobulb in order to get rid of the problem, it's not a biggie. Your orchid has enough storage organs to go around. Meanwhile, can we just take just take a break and look at this? Oh, root tips. Let's go from the ugly to the beauty. Oh, I love it. Meanwhile, they're not going to make it. It's going to frazzle out. This bottom one will. This top one will frazzle out. C'est la vie in my climate up here. Okay. Now I do want to show you another image, though, by comparison to what is a problem. And yeah, we're talking older pseudobulbs, but they're not easy accessible, and they could pose a massive problem for the rest of the orchid. And this is something that you can't watch and wait and see what happens. This is something that needs to be addressed sa-sa-he-vi, which I did. These pseudobulbs are also now non-existent. This is my twinkle from the beginning of the year, I think. Now she's a fraction of herself, but anyway, she's still alive, still got her. But these are old pseudobulbs in a very tight-knit network, and they are rotting. This is an old pseudobulb, not on its natural, path of decay and decline. Clearly, you can see mold, fungus, everything is going on in this pot. It's nasty, nasty, nasty disaster. This needs to be addressed immediately. And I'm not even suggesting to unpot the orchid, because depending on the time of year, you don't want to stress an orchid out. Now, even in tight spaces like this, it is possible to get rid of it with nice, clean, sterilized snips. Every single cut, a new sterilization process takes place. Whether you heat it or you use alcohol, wait for the alcohol to evaporate, make your next cut, but deal with this ASAP, and then go gung-ho with the hydrogen peroxide. And yes, we're dealing with rot here because we've got the fungus, all the signs are there, even though the color of the pseudobulbs is exactly the same as what we saw before. Before we don't have any fungus, we've got fungus going on here. And mold. So you want to use hydrogen peroxide or any other kind of disinfecting thing, because this cannot spread. You cannot have the spores in the pot if you're not going to unpot. And I never unpotted this orchid. I'm pushing it to the wire to see how I can rescue this orchid without disturbing her in the pot. But you need to disinfect the structures, the leaves, wipe it down, hydrogen peroxide, start with a clean disc of cotton wool for all the leaves, a fresh disc of cotton wool. It's manic, it's pedantic, it's a twinkle, who cares? Throw it away, buy a new one. That is another option. I didn't do that because, I have as yet to save a twinkle, so I'm on a mission here. Now, this is not something to compare with the other one. Leca self-watering, dry top layer, check, check, check. This is a completely different story. When you see fungus and mold, get rid of it. There's no watching it. There's no observing and trying to see that it doesn't turn into rot. This is already past due by date, okay? And the same goes for, it doesn't matter what media. You see something like this, get rid of it, start disinfecting, and start babying your orchid and make it nice and clean with all the products that you have so that it is disinfected. If you're going to use bleach, use it at a ratio of 1 part bleach to 10 parts clean water. And if you have toxic water, do not use your tap water. use the cleanest water at your disposition, because anything that is not good for the orchid is another layer of stress, and you don't want that. And then, just because, let's put some hilarity into the ick. Just because I want to show you what you can buy at my garden center for a 20% discount of the total price. With that, I'm going to mute and have a glass of water, and I'll be right back. I'm going to let you contemplate this and tell me your thoughts in the comments. Or if you want to come up and discuss this in greater detail, I'm all for it. There we go. Okay, I just had to fill up my water, so I'm back. Yeah, isn't this nice? You can see the bench. There's more orchids in the background. Some are in better condition than others, but isn't this lovely? I don't know what you're thinking, but this is an orchid on the bench, regular as per, you know, it's for sale. And if I were to buy this orchid, I wouldn't get it for free. There is no sale, none of that. I would get a 20% discount. It is, Anna. It is. And I took it because when I talk about the discounts and the deals and the things that I hear, and the orchids are fine, and you know, yeah, there's maybe 3 or 4 blooms left on them. I know and the deals that I see around the world, and then I look at our benches, we don't get deals, and yet this is still there. So when I look at this image, or when I go to this, this is the place where I buy my pots, by the way. I am always so tempted. Exactly, Fernanda, that was exactly what I was about to say. This, I want to work there. I want to work there, not just because of the orchids, but because it is possible. It doesn't have to come to this, you know. So yeah, it's just ridiculous. So if you're out there and you get yourself a pretty deal and there's a floppy leaf or something, know that this is our reality here in Spain. And if I went to the register with this orchid, they would charge me minus 20%. So there you go. There you go. I'm going to show you one more image just because it's kind of fun. It's kind of fun. And it may surprise you. But I'm going to do a video on this one because we've been following her. Ta-da! If you know the videos, if you know the history behind this orchid, I got me a perfect bloom on my loose Neri blue. Isn't she pretty? Meanwhile, the next bud also opened perfectly. And then we've got a lot of weird stuff going on. And this would be my second virus orchid. She's just a weirdo. She really is. But I thought I would share with you the one bloom that opened, plus its compadre. And I just thought, you know, this is a nice way to finish an icky subject, even though you can see the twisted spike and all the nastiness that shows that this orchid is not recovering. It'll never recover. But oh my goodness, she smells so beautiful. I think she's now opened her 4th spike. I'm still waiting for one more. But apart from the 2 perfect bloom, not a single other bloom is the same as its next one. Not a single one. I just like can't win them all. But I love this orchid. I love this orchid because, you know, I could say the same about C.G. Roebling, but no, this orchid has had me on a journey of discovery for the last 4 years. And I don't know, she's just kind of really, you know, she belongs, even though she's virus, but I can't get rid of her. I can't. She's just one of those. Every bud that opens is like, what do you look like? You're trying to be a squoptimus or squidgimus, you know, octopus, a combination of octopus and squid, a squidgimus, I don't know. Anyway, I just wanted to show you that we got ourselves, even though this picture only shows one, we got two. So if anybody has any questions, you know, we've been pretty good with the Q&A throughout the chat. You have one of them? Chris son, you do? Oh, that's nice. Or do you have the normal loose Neri? Or the one that has a deeper, richer color? Because if you have the deeper, richer color one, like this one, I need to know. I need to know if yours is going to bloom beautifully, prettily, and perfectly. In the center of the plants. Okay. I'm not sure I understand that comment. You have dark pink. Oh, that's pretty, Patricia. Is that a different form? It's such a shame I have a lag in my streaming. Such a shame. I don't like to keep you guys with dead air. Anyway, so I don't want to, you know, I'm sort of looking at comments too, because I'm asking questions. I have to count the seconds and maybe I get a reply. But, you know, there's always the dialogue in the comments below as well. So I'm going to call it. I have to bring in an Ancelia africana or two. Everybody else is already inside. So I want to say thank you to everybody. Oh, there you are. No, they wouldn't. No, they wouldn't, Anna. Definitely not. It's daylight robbery, I tell you. It's daylight robbery. When I bought my Oncostelle wildcat from them, I didn't know it was one. I didn't know, sorry. I didn't know it was an Oncostelle. It was, you know, a rescue plant. She looked pretty patetico. I was so shocked that I only got 20% discount. I was so shocked. But I knew I could bring her through. That's why I bought her. Otherwise, I would have taken her back. But anyway, I want to say thank you so much for watching. I so appreciate that you're here. Thank you for being here. It was a long one. I did not expect that. I thought maybe we would stop in between and then I would, you know, do it on chapters, etc., etc. But no, I appreciate that you were here. Thank you so very, very much. I'm going to go to the YouTube side of things now because I want to make sure I don't cut anybody off and I can see you. All right, Brea. Everybody that is affected by the blizzard, the cyclone blast, the whatever it is, please stay safe if you're traveling. Please stay safe. And I hope that everybody is where they needs to be tonight, this afternoon, or tomorrow, whenever. I'm going to kill that frog. I'm going to kill that frog. I'm going to go out with my BB gun and kill my frog. 7 Fias blooms. Awesome. Okay. So I'll see you hopefully in the next live. If not, I'll see you around the tubes. Much love to you, hand hearts and all that fun stuff. And stay safe. Take care. Bye.